when I tell you I died and I re-experienced being born, that's not a metaphor.
Yeah.
I literally went through exactly what it is going to be like to die.
Right.
It did that. And like, it was, so what came out, it was like, if anybody wants to know, I'm like, it's terrifying, but you just don't resist it and you just surrender to it.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric Oberembt and you're listening to Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out. We talk about real shit, what's on our minds, and don't give a fuck if it makes you feel a little uncomfortable. So sit back, strap in, and get ready for some real shit. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out. I'm your host, Eric Oberembt. So we are recording, whatever you want to call it, our first episode back in Omaha, but in the new studio in Omaha. So that's exciting. Our guest today, this was super impromptu. So glad it was able to happen. But Tim Grieve, everybody knows Tim Grieve, my general manager, literally sent me a text and was like, hey, that Becca gal is coming to town. Is this something that I should take Mike to? And I was like, wait, what? She's coming to town? Why didn't I know that? And so I reached out and I said, hey, you're in my city. Get the fuck over here so that we can do a podcast. She graciously said yes.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, isn't it? And here we are. So I want to introduce everybody and welcome my guest today. This is going to be a really fun conversation. Becca Switzer. Becca, thank you for being here.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
I'm actually from here. Well, sort of.
Which is crazy, right? Like, so, we were telling this story before. This is what's always weird doing a podcast, when you spend a little bit of time before you come.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, did we talk about this? Did I not? Yeah. And then we're talking about it again.
I know.
But anyway, so I'll tell everybody else the story. So when I found out, and I didn't tell you this part, I reached out on Facebook Messenger because that's how we've always communicated in the past. And I wasn't getting an answer. And I was like, fuck, I got to get a hold of this broad, like, before she comes so she doesn't book all of her fucking time up so we can make this happen. So now I'm texting people that I know and I'm like, Hunter, do you have fucking Becca's phone number? He's like, dude, I don't have phone numbers. He's like, I live on Facebook Messenger. I'm like, fuck, Diego's got it. So I text Diego and I'm, Diego, give me Becca's number. And he sends it to me, but it's a 402 number. And I'm like, well, that's wrong.
There's no way that's right.
There's no way that that's right. So I literally just scrapped it and then waited for you to fucking.
It was my number.
Yeah, it was her number. Yeah, and it was real. So anyway, but yeah, you're like, you grew up around here.
Yeah, Council Bluffs, right across the river.
And we're still going to go ahead and be friends.
Yeah, it's, it wasn't my choice. I was a child, so really I was a victim.
Did they call it Council Tucky back then?
Yeah, it's
okay.
always been.
Okay.
It's always been.
So you lived there till when? How long?
Gosh, I was 7. I was in 2nd grade when we moved there from Randolph, Nebraska, which is a very tiny town, from Canada. And then... Do
you have dual citizenship?
I only have Canadian citizenship.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, just Canadian.
We'll get into that. Okay,
Straight
go
up.
on.
So much to talk about.
Okay.
But I lived here, and then I went to University of Iowa for 2 years. So until I was like 19.
Okay.
And then I moved all over the place. I started, I sold Cutco for 2 years. So then I was in,
I swear to God, I thought you were just going to say I started stripping.
And I started stripping. When you have, it's like use your assets.
I don't know why, but that's like what it sounded like it was going. And I was like, this is going to be a fun conversation.
Then I stripped. Well, it's like college and you're broke. You got I don't have an education. So I'm going to strip. Yeah, dance, right. So, I started selling Cutco then. So I was in Omaha for a brief moment in time. And then I was down in Kansas City. And then when I got into roofing, I was moving all over the place, like Connecticut and Pennsylvania and St. Louis. But now I'm in Colorado.
So is that where you learned to sell Cutco?
In Omaha and in Kansas City.
Because Cutco's like a fucking cult, isn't it? Like, like they're the real deal. People, like, if you're not good at it, you're like, it's a scam. And if you're really good at it, you're like, this is awesome. It's one of those things. Were you awesome?
I was really good.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I was like the number 1 sales rep for 1 or 2 years when I joined. I had like a $12,000 fast start back in fast start contest is your first 10 days on the job.
Okay.
So they try to get people to sell $10,000 in knives at the time. This was like 2008. And I sold like $12,000 and they were like, well, nobody had even done 10 in that office before.
Really?
So I did pretty good. And then I dropped out of college after that summer because I'm like, why am I going to school? I just made like 25 grand as a 19-year-old kid. And
Did you make good money at Cutco?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you make like 50% of what you sell.
Oh, shit.
So I did 6 figures 2 years in a row. So 19, 20-year-old kid making 50 grand. Like that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And then what'd you do next?
I sold roofs. So
For who?
So it's actually kind of a funny story because I remember exactly sitting in my car. I had a yellow Dodge Neon.
Cool.
If people have followed me, they've seen pictures of it probably because that's what I sold roofs in first. And I was in Kansas City driving down the road. My phone rings and it's my ex-husband, who at the time was also the manager of the Cutco office that I was working.
Was he your ex-husband then?
He was my fiance then, or boyfriend or fiance, depending on what time it was. I guess fiance probably. But anyway, so he calls me up, I answer, and he's like, "Hey, do you think you could sell roofs?" And I was like roofs, like on a house? He's like, "Yeah." And I go, I mean, I guess. I'm like, if somebody tells me what to say, like, yeah, why not? And so he goes on about how this guy reached out to him who was recruiting Cutco people for this roofing thing, the storm restoration thing. He's like, sounds like a racket. Like, insurance, like storms come and then insurance company pays for it and people get basically free roofs. So long story short, the guy, unbeknownst to us, was breaking out. He was the vice president of the second largest storm restoration company in the country at the time. Aspen Contracting, breaks off, starts his own thing. So he's like headhunting top salespeople because, and Cutco salespeople are like the best reps. They're so good because they train us exactly what to do. Like we have a whole manual. So long story short, sold us on it, took us to some dinners, showed us some big fat commission checks. And I was like, I can do that. And then we moved across the country and storm chased. And then of course you show up and they're just like, knock 100 doors a day. And you're like, what? Like, what are you going to tell me what to do? There's no script. There's no, book or training or anything like that. So long story short, figured out how to sell roofs and did really, really well at it. And then was like, what if I taught people to do what I just figured out? So
how long did you chase before you decided to make the transition?
So 2010, 11, and then part of 12 I was chasing. I did Connecticut, Central Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, and then we went to...
Not typical places you chase.
No, but it was really smart because they had these random big-ass storms out there.
Yeah.
So
and
there's not that much competition. Exactly.
Yeah.
Tough market too. Like Pennsylvania, people are not super friendly out there. Like it's Steelers country. Okay.
Right.
It's like, so an interesting place. And I still was I was a 21-year-old college dropout in a yellow Dodge Neon. I didn't know shit about roofing. I didn't know anything. And I had Iowa plates on my car.
Oh shit.
Didn't change my phone number. Like the guy that was running companies, like, you need to get Pennsylvania plates. You need to change your phone number. I was like, no, I don't. I'm like, I don't need that to sell. So figured it out, did really well. And then long story short, we ended up going to a storm in St. Louis in like 2012, stayed local there until 2015.
Oh.
And then I went full time into just doing roof sales mastery after that.
Okay.
So that's what I've been doing. Got divorced,
How long were you married?
Technically, I was married from 2010 to 2016.
Okay.
But then we didn't legally actually get divorced till 22.
Oh.
We just literally were like, bye.
Really?
Yeah. It was like we didn't really have plans on getting legally divorced because it's just like so much bullshit that you have to go through.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any arguments over like stuff that we owned. So we're just like, let's
so you
just go.
Existed being married.
Yeah.
For that long.
Yeah.
What about taxes? Is that a pain in the ass?
No.
I
just filed as married filing separately. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Which I think is like the most expensive way to do taxes.
Probably.
But I'd rather have a tax problem than a money problem. So I was like, that's whatever.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've seen all of the episodes of this show. But if you haven't, what we generally like we'll talk a little bit about work and we'll talk a little bit about what we do and
but everybody's heard the work stuff.
Yeah, don't care. Like, I mean, I care because I want to know more about you, but like one of the reasons that I started this was I knew it would give me an opportunity and a platform literally just to like hang out with cool people and like get to know them better.
Yeah.
Because like I said, when you go to a show, right? What do? We walk around, we shake a hand, give a hug, and we're like, it was really good to see you. How are the kids? Good? Family good? Yep. All right, we'll see you next year, right? Yeah. And you never get to sit down and like really kind of dig in a little bit and like find out like who people are, right? So that the goal is that when you're done with like a real conversation with somebody after 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, like you leave and you're like, you know what? I think I'm actually friends with that person. And like, I could call them and like, that would be okay. Right.
Absolutely.
That's always the goal of this. And it's also, we call it a comfortable place to have uncomfortable conversations.
Sure.
So like nothing is taboo, nothing is off limits. Like if it's uncomfortable for you, we don't have to talk about it.
Cut.
But like, right. But we don't cut anything.
Yeah.
Is the point, right? So like if you don't want to talk about it, don't.
Sure.
And that's fine. Actually, the only time we cut something one time was that somebody said somebody's name. Yeah. And they were like, oh, I don't want to fucking deal with them. I don't want to deal with them. Can you please cut that? And I was like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'll cut that. So anyway, so that's what I kind of want to dig into a little bit. Is it because honestly, like, I just want to learn more about you.
Yeah.
And I think that like the people that watch the show just want to like know a little bit more about Becca. And so my first question, and just so you know, I make all this shit up as we go. Like I have absolutely no fucking agenda. So like,
aren't we all making shit up as we go?
Feel free to help me along like as we go. Cause like I totally just go off fucking rails. But my first impression of you, right? And then I'm going to ask you the same question, first impression of me. But my first impression of you, when I ever saw you first, heard of you, like whatever it was, right? First impression was hippie broad that does a lot of drugs.
So funny. What year was it? Because that matters. 4 years ago.
Maybe that was when I was introduced. 2020.
I was doing some drugs back then.
Okay.
Sure.
Good ones?
I mean, well, what didn't I do? I guess. Here's the thing.
So I want to hear about that path and that journey is the reason I bring it up.
Got it.
I assumed that I was right because I generally am about those things.
Yeah.
But there's always a good story behind it, right? Like I've got all kinds of drug stories that we can fucking dig into, right?
We're going to have a really fun conversation then today.
Then let's fucking go.
Okay. Yeah. This is going to get really weird for people.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up.
Sorry, Lexi, that was really loud with the ice.
I actually thought of that earlier.
She's gonna be listening to that. She's like, God fucking damn it, Eric.
I looked at my coffee and I was like, and my first thought was like, I'm gonna like headbutt the mic, and then I'm like, but then if I drink my coffee, I'm probably gonna need to do.
If you need to move, you do this. You go.
Yeah, I know, but I don't trust that I'm gonna get it right when I see. Now I just did it, and now am I like I have to look down here? Are the green lights good? Am I yelling? Am I hurting anybody's ears?
She's really good in post, so she can fix everything.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So sorry. Growing up.
Yeah, growing up. Okay.
Sorry.
So growing up, my family was very, very strict. My parents are assholes. Can we edit that out? I'm just kidding. They can hear it. My parents were super, super strict. It's really interesting because they weren't like actually religious in the sense that they were like really striving to be good people, but they were like, you know, like self-righteous type, use it as a virtue type thing, but extremely strict. I would get in trouble for listening to the radio. They would call it secular. I was not allowed to watch things like Boy Meets World. I got in trouble for watching stuff like that. So very straight edge. So I had a lot of Christian guilt, you know, like you're not allowed to do anything. So I really didn't do anything that was like partying related until later in high school, which still sounds early, but I was so straight edge until I think I was 16. And then I like started drinking with my friends. And of course we were like super reckless. And that's all we did, right? It was like wait for the weekends to party. And then I went to college for 2 years, same thing, very dark period of my life. Actually, I didn't realize until later how depressed I was like the first 2 years of college. I also think it also had to do though, I'd started taking the pill, like birth control pill, but I didn't know anything about birth control. And I wasn't even taking it to prevent pregnancy. I was actually taking it for acne at the time. Oh. But I was on what's called a triphasic pill. And so what it does, it's supposed to mimic your natural cycle, I guess, but it's so over the course of 4 weeks, it's a different amount and combination of hormones every week. Okay. You can imagine the emotional roller coaster.
Is that is that like on the wheel one?
It's a pack, but same thing. I mean, the pill, it doesn't matter.
I just remember seeing that when I was like 16.
Right, pop it open.
Yeah,
you're like,
it was on a calendar. It's like, bitch, you missed a day. Like,
yeah. Exactly. It basically is like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize, it was weird. Like when you're young, I wasn't very self-aware in being like, my body feels different. Oh, right. I'm sad all the time. Or like, I can't get out of bed, like type of a thing. So that plus just drinking all the time, I was just like in a really weird dark place. And I didn't know what I was really doing at school. So I got, when I left college after my sophomore year and I started selling Cutco, I kind of stopped partying altogether. I was on a career path. I was like making money and I was really motivated and focused. I was getting recognition at the company I was working at. And then I met somebody, I was getting married, so I really didn't party anymore from like ages 19 until like 27 or 28.
Oh, wow.
I like didn't even drink at all,
Oh, wow.
But then I got divorced. And so during that window of time,
that will trigger a drinking session.
Well, not even, I was never somebody that was like, I need a drink. It's not like that. Like I never kept alcohol in the house or anything like that, but I would socially go out and party.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't like going to bars and stuff like that. It was like music festivals.
Yeah.
So I discovered MDMA. It's so fun.
Is that ecstasy?
Yeah, more or less. MDMA is the pure component. So ecstasy is like Molly, but so you'd call MDMA Molly. Molly with amphetamines is ecstasy. So that could be anything. It's more methy. Oh. You're up. It's very fun.
Oh, that was why when I did ecstasy, they're like, drink a lot of water.
Oh yeah. But Molly too. Yeah. You're just like,
okay.
But it's really fun. How that drug works though is it flushes out. So all your like feel good serotonin that's in your brain, it flushes it out. So you're just like flooded with the feel good chemicals of your brain that you then need to wait 6 weeks to restore in a natural balance in your brain. But you feel like,
so it fucks you up a lot afterwards.
Yeah. Like people are really sad.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
But during you're like,
yeah,
so happy and you like love everybody and you just want to like touch people and be touched. And it's like really fun. So I was doing a lot of like raves, right? Like music festivals and raves and stuff like that. Met some great people. And that was just like what we did. We'd go to music festivals and take Molly and do blow or eat mushrooms and drink and party and have a good time. I never had a problem with drugs or alcohol. I mean, it would just be like when I would occasionally go, but I was partying hard when I partied.
Yeah.
And then really like 2 years ago, I kind of just stopped doing it. I also was dating somebody who was not good with was an alcoholic. He would never admit that, but has a problem with drinking. And it was just like, I got really turned off by it. And then I also felt like I can't even have a glass of wine without this person having like 6 beers at dinner. You know what I mean? So it was like, I stopped doing it altogether. And then I stopped doing it for so long that when I started doing it again, not that I started, but I was like, I don't think I like this. Like, I don't actually like being not sober. I will enjoy a glass of wine.
Sure.
So that was kind of my journey with it. But now, psychedelics are a really fascinating way to access higher consciousness in my spiritual journey. So I don't know if you saw, I went to Peru last month, February.
Yep.
And I did ayahuasca there and I did DMT.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Oh my God. How much time do we have?
I mean, we got as much time as you want.
Are you sure you have the emotional energy to listen to this story? It's very deep. Okay. You can interrupt me, ask questions, because otherwise it's going to be like the Becca show. So do you know much about ayahuasca? A
little bit. Yeah. Cause Taggart tried to get me to go to Peru with him.
Yeah.
To fucking do it. Yeah. And I was like,
go by yourself.
Well, so here's the thing, and I'm not to interrupt, but like,
please interrupt.
I've got this weird thing because like I'm very interested because like I want to know more about ayahuasca or microdosing or like some of these different things that like people are having the same journey as you of like letting go of these things and finding new levels and blah blah blah. And like that's all very interesting to me because like I'm on this personal growth journey and like I'm doing all these things in my life over the last 5 years. But I know me well enough that I know that that my intention is what drives my alcoholism and my drug addiction. Yeah. Right. I know that about me. In the sense of, people are watching this. So like, I got to be clear about what I'm fucking saying, because obviously there's a lot of people that follow me because of my recovery. Yeah. Right. And I always want to make sure that I'm not giving information out there that would lead somebody down a path that they shouldn't be going down. Right. Because if I go out and try something, right, and people find out that I did, and then they're like, well, fuck, if Eric did it and he's sober, I could do it. But then all of a sudden that turns into, well, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, because that's, as alcoholics and drug addicts, like that's how our brain fucking works. And then they fucking die. right? Because they went down another fucking path. And then I'm like, shit, now I got to live. So like I run all these scenarios through my head.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so I'm choosing to not do things now because not of judgment, but of like ramifications of something that could happen to somebody else because I'm public now. Isn't that weird? Like it's a weird dynamic.
To be clear though, like
talk me into it. Like,
well, what I'm so something like ayahuasca, that's not a party drug.
No,
there's no.
I also
comparison.
don't want to shit and piss and cum like
you
in
will
a
do
fucking,
that. Yeah,
yeah, like,
probably not the coming, but maybe the shitting and pissing definitely, and the puking and all that. Like ayahuasca is used to treat addiction.
Right.
So it's like ibogaine. You know, I know less about ibogaine than I do about ayahuasca, but like these are not.
It's not party.
It's not fun.
No.
You're going through a purging process that's a
Right.
deeply spiritually awakening, transformative, transcendent process. It would, like, I think somebody with addiction would come out of that not wanting to touch that shit ever again. In fact, it's interesting. The guy that was next to me came out of one of his ceremonies. He's like, I don't think I'm going to drink anymore. And I was like, cool. I was like, me neither. I don't, so it's very, very different. Like we're talking about plant medicines. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about party. There's no party there with this stuff, right? It's a very, very different. It is miserable. I'll tell you about my third ceremony with ayahuasca. And you'll be like, holy shit, that sounds terrible. But it's very, very different. So, but yeah, you need to feel called to it, like psychedelics, and it's very different still from LSD, or I would say there were some similarities with mushrooms if you take like a really fat dose of mushrooms. Like, but again, intention really matters. Like if you take mushrooms and just go traipse around a park, you might not have the exact, or a music festival where there's a lot of engagement, stuff like that. That's going to be different than having a condensed dose of mushroom tea and sitting by yourself, going inward and contemplating something in your life, you know? So they're just like very different. But yeah, I just felt ready. I knew I'd had some really beautiful experiences with mushrooms before, and I wanted to go deeper with that. And I had watched maybe a documentary about ayahuasca, but I was like, I'm just ready. And I'd gone through a breakup, and it was like, I was being called to it. And it's actually really funny. It almost found me. And what I mean when I say that, so I had decided I was going to do ayahuasca this past winter at some point. And I have three dogs, but I have two dogs that are dog aggressive. They're both rescues. And I was desperate.
They're aggressive towards other dogs?
Towards other dogs, not other people. Yeah, they're marshmallows to people, but they're like not cool with other dogs. And I was desperate to get help with it. And I found this dog trainer named Juliet, shout out to Loyal Hound in Denver. And I hadn't met her yet, but we were like texting back and forth, and I'd scheduled my first training session with her. And after I got off the phone, I realized I double booked myself because I was supposed to have a Tony Robbins event in Dallas that exact weekend. So I texted her back. I was like, hey, could I reschedule that? And she goes, the next time I'd be able to see you is like 3 months down the road because I'm taking time off. And I'm like, never mind. I was like, I can't wait that long. Like I need help with my dogs right now. So I said, don't even worry about it. I'll just reschedule for the next Tony Robbins event. I'm sure they'll swap my ticket. I'm going to be doing ayahuasca in the jungle anyways this winter. And she goes, oh, where are you going? And I said, well, I haven't actually picked a place yet. I'm like, but I just know that I'm going to go. She goes, this might be really serendipitous, but I put a deposit down 2 years ago or 3 years ago, something like that, on an ayahuasca, like a 7-day ayahuasca retreat that it was like right when COVID was happening. And in Peru at that time, there was political upset and it was like dangerous. They weren't letting people travel to or from. So she's like, I've been sitting on this deposit forever. She's like, I can't use it for a while. Like I have, my business is popping off right now. I've got some races that I'm doing. She's like, would you want to take over my ticket? And I said, well, where is it? Because I really wanted to do it in Peru. And she said, it's in the Sacred Valley in Peru. And I was like, okay, sold. Like the perfect, yeah, it was so funny because she had done all the research already and like picked a place, all that. So I said yes, took over the deposit, and then I went down there. So this was just last month. So I'm like fresh off of this thing too.
Shit. Okay.
Yeah, it was in February.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So so basically ayahuasca, how they make it is there's the ayahuasca vine, but if you made tea out of the vine stuff itself, nothing happens. Like there's not the psychoactive ingredient or whatever. So they have to pair it with the coca leaf, which is in Peru. So they combine these two plants, they make a brew out of it, and you drink that and you have a very powerful psychedelic experience, right? So first of all, the intelligence of plants is absolutely mind-boggling. What the fuck is that? That you can just take two plants. Yeah. Who figured this out, right? It's like two plants alone, they do nothing. You put them together and it's like you meet God. What is that?
Well, how about the intelligence of plants, but the intelligence of people to fucking figure it out?
Aliens.
100%.
How many downloads do you have to have?
Like, there's no fucking, like, how would you figure that out?
I know, it's amazing. A lot of trial and error.
Yeah, right? Like we rub these together. Yeah, like
it gets weirder. Okay. So I'll get to that part too. So, anyways, so that's what they do. So I went down to Peru. I was at a retreat center there called Arcana, and it was a 7-day trip. And you do 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, 1 sapo ceremony, which is DMT from a toad called Bufo alvaris, DMT, and then they call it Wachuma down there, but a San Pedro ceremony. Okay. Which is from the cactus. That's also like a psychedelic. Okay. So you set intentions, right?
You're like fucked up for a week?
Yeah, dude. Jesus. I thought my brain broke. We'll get to this part later, but yeah, on day 4, I was like...
You're just retarded.
Just like drooling on myself. I was like, where? It's actually kind of scary because I was like, I forget why I'm here. It's funny. I thought I wasn't going to come back. I did. I don't want to scare anybody. It's a long story.
But in that moment, I was like, you don't know, like, yeah. Do you know where you were?
I did know where I was, but I remember, I was like, what was I here? Like what? I knew that I was there for ayahuasca, but I was like, what was it supposed to be like? That was a question. I was like, what was it for?
Wow,
so
you were
bad.
Fried.
Just for a little bit, but don't let that scare anybody. Yeah. Nobody else felt like that. It was just but I'll tell you why later. We'll do it in chronological order. So, so the first day we have a ceremony and it starts at 8 p.m. So it goes for like 6 hours. I mean, we were in temple till like 2:30 in the morning. But how they do it is they make the tea, and then there's 2 shamans there. And we're all lined up on like beds next to each other. And then across from us are like facilitators.
That's the other part that I don't like, but go on.
It won't bother you at all. You're not going to be noticing anybody else. So
which is what I've heard, but just going into it, I'm like,
this is going to be uncomfortable. These people become your brothers and sisters. I mean, you're going through hell and back together. Yeah. Or heaven, depending on your ceremony. So you take your first, so you get centered, right? You have your intentions, kind of general, but my intentions that night were centered around understanding the human experience, understanding consciousness on a more deeper level, understanding the purpose of my human experience. And then I also asked to see myself as God sees me. Like, what am I? So, I'm really curious about consciousness and existentialism. That's like I think about it all day. I'm like, why? What is my purpose? What am I here for? What is this?
I'm with you.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So
this is going to last a long time. So that's totally fine. This interview might go as long as like I have a record. So go on. We'll see if we can beat it.
It's funny because I feel like, oh my gosh, nobody wants to hear all of this, but they probably really do. I guess. Yeah.
And they'll listen to as much as they want. Fuck them if they don't want the rest. I give 0 fucks.
It's a long story. I don't really want to skip anything because it would cheapen the experience.
Don't skip anything. We might take a break, go grab a water. Doesn't fucking matter. Yeah. Like, absolutely. We're good.
I'm a peer,
Yeah.
Like
are you a peer?
Yeah. But this is my second venti coffee today. My heart might stop. It's fine.
I think I have some accelerators downstairs too.
I'm fine.
Yeah, you're good.
So those are my intentions that I went into it with. But the thing about psychedelics is intentions are not exactly, I mean, they're kind of loosey-goosey, right?
Sure.
You go in with them, but what they say is the medicine's going to give you what you want, not necessarily what you need, not necessarily what you want. Right. Yeah. So you're like, I'm going to do this. It's like, nope, we're taking you over here.
Which is a really good cop out to like fucking, you know what I mean? Like
anything can happen.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. No, but just makes me think of con man.
Yeah. This is what you needed.
Right. Yeah.
But it actually really is like that. It's so fascinating. And by the way, I will say, everything that I'm trying to share with you now and communicate with you now is still if somebody goes into an experience like this, forget everything I say. You don't have an expectation about it.
Different for you.
Totally different for you. And B, it's just like I'm barely able to even adjacently tell you what I actually experienced because words really fail.
Sure.
which is crazy. Gosh, I actually might even want to get my journal. Can I grab my journal? Because a lot of my stuff is in there. And if I don't look at it, I might
grab
forget.
it. Yeah. Lexi, we'll cut here for a second. Sure. Actually, fuck it. We don't even need to cut. She can just keep filming. Right. She can like make it a little fast forward and make it cute. I'm going to grab a water.
Cool.
Do you want a water?
Yeah. I might not touch it because I might keep drinking coffee because I'm a crazy person. I don't even, oops, sorry.
Well, actually, there's a bang in here.
Yeah, I don't really do energy drinks. You know what's funny? I don't even drink coffee. I just really enjoy drinking the iced brown sugar shaken oat milk espresso, say that 20 times fast, from Starbucks. And that's why I drink it. Otherwise, I don't even do caffeine. So this is literally like crack to me. I'm like, is it okay if I cry on this show?
Yep.
Okay, great. Because I probably will.
I've had 4 criers.
Yeah, it's funny. If I really connect with this, I will bawl my eyes out. All right. Check. Yep. Check 1, 2. Okay.
Okay, we're back. We're back.
Okay. Did we ever leave?
We're back. She'll figure out how to cut it.
Cool.
But we are back, and we are back with a journal.
We're back with a journal.
Back with a journal.
I'm not going to like read all this. I
Sure.
might read part of it though, but to skim over it to make sure I don't forget details because it's like all. It's like a psychedelic journey is kind of like when you wake up from a very vivid dream and then you're trying to tell somebody what the dream was, and your dream is like this much, but you're only able to like communicate that much. It's like very similar to that. So
that's a really good explanation.
Yeah, it's tough even to yourself. Like when you try to journal, you're like, this is so stupid. I'm barely even scratching the surface of this. So, So essentially, you're going into that process and everybody's lined up. You're sitting lotus position, really just kind of setting your intentions, getting centered, and almost like in a meditative state, right? And then it's pitch black in the room. The shamans start by giving everybody their dose, right? Your first dose, and we had 3 doses on the first night of ceremony. But and then you go sit back down and you just sit in dead silence for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, something like that. And then the shaman starts singing what's called Icaros, which are like a ceremonial song. So if you've done psychedelics, like, you know that when music plays, it really directs, it like kicks on the experience. Okay. So they're singing these songs that basically guide you through the ceremony. And they're like in a different language, like they're speaking Spanish or Quechua, which is like a old language in Peru. So anyway, the first thing that happened for me, so I had my first dose. I'm sitting there just breathing. And then I remember even like moving. So it's funny. They when they do images of ayahuasca, like paintings and stuff like that, there's always a snake. It's like a serpent energy, like the vine, right? Mm-hmm. Jaguars, hummingbirds, and a condor is like when the painters paint from their visions. Those are like the images that they have. So it's funny because I remember sitting there in the dark and I was just like moving like this as the medicine was starting to course through my body, like it just like naturally moving with the energy. And then the first thing that happened was, it didn't matter if my eyes were open or closed, but pink energy was starting to swirl in this way. And then like turquoise blue energy was starting to swirl in this way. And then sometimes it would come together in the middle and like kind of turn purple. And I was like, okay, we're starting to have some visuals here. And then the weirdest thing that happened in the beginning, you know how people like talk about your third eye, right? And it's always depicted as like being here, but it's not a physical thing, right? It's like a concept. I was sitting there and it felt like 2 trickles of water were just coming down my forehead right here. And then it would stop in the middle of my forehead and just like tingle and vibrate. Like all the energy was just like here. And I was like, whoa, what is this? So a little bit of time passes and I think they're singing their Icaros. And then at some point they're like, okay, if you're ready for your second dose, come up and get it. So I'm like, cool. Go up, I get my second dose, I sit back down and I close my eyes and I just start to get taken down what I can only describe as like a wormhole. So it's like the end of a trumpet, right? And it's like bringing me into this place where, so it looked like it was made of little tiny shiny tiles, like black and hyper technicolor. Everything was like shiny and black and colorful. That sounds like a oxymoron, right? Black and colorful, but it was both. I don't really know how else to describe it. So like brings me down there and I go through this tunnel and then I end up in this place that like a higher dimension, very clearly a higher state of consciousness. Everything was like, this is so hard to describe because it still cheapens what it actually is. I can only try with words, but it was like this place where it was like a lot of sacred geometry, but all moving, right? Everything's like coming in and out. It's the most beautiful stuff you've ever seen. It's just like moving around. Every image that you could think of was there. There were jaguars and strawberries and moths and butterflies and eyeballs and like just everything was there. All sorts of shapes and things like that. So I'm just like watching it. And then the other thing was, it's funny because I have this necklace on that has this little puzzle piece. And I don't know if this was just what my brain used as an image or if it was intentionally that way, but it started to connect everything in the background with these little puzzle pieces. So everything was threaded together with these tiny, shiny, beautiful puzzle pieces. And it kept saying, this is the fabric of life. It was like the fabric of life is what it was calling
like
it.
Words? Like,
yes, but not, again, this is so hard to describe. It's like a download or an impression. I'm not audibly hearing a voice.
Got it.
It's just telling me, it's like the fabric of life, which is so funny because that's not a phrase I've ever used. I can't think of anything that I've like, maybe somebody else has used that phrase, but I was like, oh, to me, it was brand new. I was like, the fabric of life. So then it was showing me, it was making an emphasis on infinity. It was like showing me the infinity of all of these creative life things, right? And then it would make an emphasis on symmetry. Like, for example, it would smack this microphone in the middle. It would like a butterfly or a moth would appear, and then it would like show me the perfect symmetry of it, and then that would vanish, and then something else would appear and perfect symmetry, right? So it's showing me that, and then so I realized what it was doing. It was showing me the infinite possibilities of all creation, and I was like, "What is the point of this?" In my head. I was like, well, so what is the purpose of all this? Right? Because that was one of my intentions. And it said creativity. And I was like, okay. And then I said, why? And it just said, why not? And I was like, okay. And then I was looking at this fabric of life and I was like, how does all of this, like this is like pure imagination, right? This is the source of everything that comes into physical matter. I said, how does all of this come into physical matter? And it had a sense of humor with me and it goes, does it matter? And I was like,
Jesus Christ.
And I just started like giggling. I was like, that's hilarious. And so it was answering me by saying, it was essentially showing me like, you're not going to understand all this in your 3D human form. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter right now, but it was showing me the infinite creative possibility that is the life force, right? So, and it's interesting because when we think of the term God, most people, I mean, I was traumatized by church and religion when I was young. It was just like, you're bad and you're going to hell. You're going to burn in hell. I mean, when I was like 5 years old, my parents were telling me I was going to burn in hell forever if I thought the wrong thing.
They were
They were crazy. Yeah, okay. Yeah, like Pentecostal types, you know? And so it was interesting because to most people, I would say, and maybe you can speak on this too, but like to me growing up, God became a bearded man in the sky that plays judge or genie. Yeah. Right. And this is interesting because I've been exploring consciousness and existentialism on my own without psychedelics for the last several years. Like it's really just called to me. And I already on a logical level understood in my own way that God is a word that we try to use to explain the mystery of life. Like God is everything. Yeah. You are God in Eric's body. I'm God in a Becca body. It's the thing that beats my heart without me. I'm not doing anything right now. What is this thing? Right. I was born. What the hell is that? Right. You plant a seed and it turns into an oak tree and like an egg hatches. Like that's God. It's everything.
I've always related more to like Native American.
Yes.
Like I don't want to call it religion, but like spirituality, whatever. And I've never taken the time that you've obviously taken to dig into this, but like I've always been very attracted to that and wanted to learn more about that because I don't identify with God in the sky looking down and like dogma. I wrote a book and fucking you better follow it. And like,
yes.
Right. Like I have a huge problem with it. And then like, there's a lot of people in my life that is their world. Right. Yeah. And I get judged for it, right? Because I don't believe in that. But
isn't it ironic?
Right. But I'm also like in AA, right? Where the whole program is based in God, but not in religion per se.
A higher power.
In a higher power, right?
Yes.
And that's why I was able to identify with that. And I was okay with that because I was like, oh, I get to pick.
Yes.
I'm cool with that, right? Like I could pick. And then, I was the same thing. Cause like for me, it's like, it's nature and it's like, it's growing and it's all of these things. And it's like you said, like planting a fucking plant and it grows. Like what the fuck?
And then I can eat it. And then that turns into other, like, what is
like,
that?
That's insane. Like that's amazing. Right. To me, the way you explained it is like really, really resonates with me in that it's a word to encompass all of that. I think that's really important.
And it's so hard because there's a quote, and I don't know who says it, and I'm going to butcher the paraphrase, but it says something along the lines of, as soon as you are able to fit God into neat lines and boxes, we are no longer talking about God. God is a mysterious force that's in everything. And what's even more comfortable for me to say is divine intelligence. Mm-hmm. It's this divine intelligence. And obviously there is a higher power. Look around us right now. Grass grows on its own. Like the fact that we can make babies and shit, and like the stars and the planets are aligned perfectly. If we were like a little bit closer to the sun, we would explode and die. Right. It's like, and science isn't separate from it. Science just seems to be a way to like quantify the mystery of life, right? So
because
they're like one and the same.
We all want to be able to explain things.
We
all want an answer.
It has to make sense.
It has to make sense.
You know, it's funny too. So that reminds me also, I can't remember exactly, and maybe it wasn't to anything specific that I was asking, but in my first ceremony, part of the message that I was getting was wait and see. It said that several times. It was like, wait and see, wait and see.
When you started this journey, did you fear death?
We're going to get to that, but no, I've never.
Because I have a big fucking thing with that, but go on.
That's funny. No, you mean like in general in my life, or in the moment of doing my trip, was I afraid of death? In general. No, I've never had a fear of dying.
Okay. Why?
I don't know. It's just like, how can I control? Everybody's.
Well, I understand you can't control it.
Everybody's going to die.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you still can't fear it.
I've never felt fear about dying.
Really?
Yeah.
I fear all of the things happening that I don't get to experience.
Yeah.
As time goes on. And like, I understand, like, logically, like, all kinds of things happened before you were here, dipshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
God forbid.
Totally understand. Like, and things are going to happen after. I don't know if it's like a jealousy thing or like a pissed off thing or whatever, but it's like, I want to see Tegan at a certain age and I don't get to, or, you know what I mean? Things like that. I think that's what makes me more angry.
So, you know, it's funny. The only thing I've ever thought about where I'm like, oh my God, I can't die right now. This is sound. So I don't have kids or anything like that. And I've always had a really powerful connection to animals, like a very deeply empathetic connection to animals. So my biggest fear, anything that would be related to death, would be like, let's say I'm on a plane and my plane crashes. My dogs never see me again. And they're just like, she abandoned me. They're going to go somewhere. Like, who's going to take care of them?
Yeah.
What if they end up back in the shelter? My God, that would be the part that would like really, but dying itself.
But equate that with kids too. It's the same thing for parents, right? I mean,
But like, even this might be a really shallow like thing or I should say unqualified thing for me to say, at least with kids. I hate even saying that, but you can like explain. Like to me, it's like with my pets, you can't tell them what happened. It's just like mom left me, you know, it like breaks my heart.
That's fair.
But it's still, same type of a thing.
Yeah.
You know? So, but anyway, so wait and see was something. And I don't actually remember if that was a general impression that I was getting, like wait and see just about the mystery of life, like until you're past this state of being and then you're going to understand more of it. But that was something that it said. So then let's scooch over here.
Yeah. Scooch.
Let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. The puzzle pieces, all of that, all my questions that I asked. Yeah. So another thing, because one of the things I asked was what was the purpose of my life experience? And I don't have children. I've never wanted to have children. That's like not something that's in my life path, I don't think. But for some reason like I told you, I have a really strong connection with animals. So it showed me a vision of me like in a little village, or not a village, like a farm in a little valley, you know, and there's like a little house there, and there were just like tons of animals, and it kept saying, "You are a mama." It was like, "You are a mama." And it was saying it so gently. Oh, it's going to make me cry. But it was showing me with like animals that I was caring for. And so I have a lot of rescue dogs. I did have 5 dogs at one point, but I'm down to 3 now. But it was showing me like I was this caretaker of beings that didn't have anybody to take care of them. So that was really touching me because I'm really connected to my animals. But so that ceremony, there's a lot more actually to that, but for the sake of time, we'll just wait and see. Wait and see. Yeah. So I came out of that one, but it was so interesting. I remember being in the deepest, most beautiful meditative state I've ever been. I'm not like a big meditator. Okay. I'll try to do it like 5 or 10 minutes a couple times a week. I'm not good at it. Right. But I remember being so peaceful, and I was just like, because the guy next to me was having he was screaming and crying and swearing. He'd run into the bathroom, and like, he thought somebody was like, but I was not disturbed at all. I was like, it was just so beautiful. My body felt good. It was like really just a beautiful state. So I didn't get sick. I didn't throw up. I didn't shit myself or anything like that. So I came out of it. It was great. So the interesting thing, if you remember, I said one of my other intentions was I wanted to see me as God sees me.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I didn't necessarily get that in my experience, but it came through in other people's ayahuasca experience. So there was a girl who was a couple rows down from me or seats down from me. And she came up to me later the next day. She's like, "You were in my ayahuasca vision last night." I was like, "Really?" She goes, "You were covered in puppies." And I was like, "That's me." I was like, "Oh, that's so sweet." She's
and she
like,
didn't know anything about you.
No, I know. She's just like, "You were just covered in puppies." I was like, and then there was another girl a couple seats down further from Shanghai. And she came up to me and she was like, she was calling her ayahuasca mama, like the guide of her experience. She's like, she goes, you were a big part of like my ceremony last night. She said, you were there, you were like protecting me like during my ceremony. And then she said, ayahuasca mama just wanted me to tell you that you are an amazing person and you're like a very beautiful person. I was like, thank you for saying that. It's like, I needed to hear that.
Did you feel like you did need to hear that? Like, was that something that you were like you didn't know you were searching for, but that you found?
Yeah. Gosh, you're really going to make me cry.
Sorry.
It's okay. I can cry. You just got to break the seal. I might need a Kleenex later if we start, but it's okay.
You got a shirt.
I've had a rough go of some things. So my mom has borderline personality disorder and she's like sociopathic. She's very cruel. I haven't talked to my parents in like 10 years. And my dad is also like a very bad person. They're just terrible people. So I grew up just thinking something is the matter with me, right? I'm bad. Like I'm just a bad person. I'm a bad kid. So going through, I think I've always like unconsciously even carried it until very recently. Like, I went through a divorce. I felt I was not a good person going through my divorce. Like this is all stuff I've had to process recently. So my parents moved me from Canada when I was 5 and like cut us off from our entire family, told us a bunch of lies. They hated us. They didn't like us. And like, so I grew up in this like psycho household of 2 very emotionally abusive or neglectful parents my whole life. And I didn't have there was no grandma, grandpa, aunts, cousins. I was just like in this crazy house. And it was really hard for me to make friendships because my mom, if you don't know anything about like borderline personality disorder, it's like narcissistic personality disorder, but like way worse, like very cruel type. Have you ever seen the movie Mommy Dearest?
No.
Some other time, or maybe you guys could cut this in if you really want to. If you look up on YouTube, wire hanger scene, Mommy Dearest, it's a movie about somebody with BPD. And that's my mom. She's a psycho. So all this to say, there was no, like, I never experienced like affection, love, kindness, compassion, empathy. It was just like constant survival mode, punishment all the time, manipulation, just stuff like that. So I came out of that and then I cut myself off from my parents when I was like 25. Long story. We're not going to tell that one.
But you went a while.
Yeah. And I got married really young. So I married the first person I ever dated. I was 19 when I met my ex-husband.
Because someone loved you.
Well, subconsciously, right? Like I didn't have any concept of, it was just like, and he was older than me. So it was kind of like a dad figure almost,
Yeah.
Like somebody who could take care of me. Nobody took care of me, you know? So went through that process, but we just ended up not having anything in common, you know? So I was unhappy in my marriage, but I was terrified to leave. I also still had Christian guilt, right? You don't get divorced. But I was like, I have to. I was so miserable. I just wasn't happy, and I wasn't making him happy because I'm not happy, right? So I finally gathered the courage to decide to leave. But when I did, I have never experienced in my life so much anxiety. I was like, for a year, I was having panic attacks, anxiety attacks. People who were my clients even were reaching out, like supporting me. Shout out to some of you guys. Like I was really falling apart. But during that time, I didn't understand what was happening. All of this grief that was unprocessed from the last almost 30 years of my life was coming up, but I had no awareness. It was just pain. Like only pain is all I could feel. So, but I lashed out, you know, I just felt like I didn't know how to handle my own pain and grief. So I was like lashing out at my ex-husband and like being very like attacking, you know, like trying to shift the blame almost because I didn't know how to process it on my own. And I also didn't have anybody to support me. I didn't have mom or dad or, you know, like, so it was just really difficult for me during that time. And that made me feel
alone. Like, that's a horrible place to be.
Your first breakup ever is a divorce.
Right.
You don't have a mom and dad.
Right.
You were cut off from your entire family. You don't know your relatives, like literally alone. It was really hard. So, but I acted out really aggressively.
And that's also when people kill themselves.
I was very close. Yeah, it was very close to that. I remember waking up in the morning and not wanting to wake up and like trying to make myself go back to sleep until I had to wake up, you know, like you can't sleep forever. And thank God I had a dog. If I didn't have my dog, Raleigh, I literally wouldn't be here right now because I like had to get up and like take care of him. But it was like, as soon as I knew I had to get up, it just felt like there was an elephant sitting on my chest. It would just be anxiety. And then I was like, okay, Becca, you got to get up. So I'd like try to get up and I would just hit the floor, like having just a full on panic attack. Sorry, I'm crying so much.
It's okay.
So it was a really, really tough time. But all that to say, that lasted for like a year and a half. But I just felt like a terrible person. Like I felt really guilty for leaving my marriage and hurting somebody. I felt really guilty for how I was behaving because I couldn't like not be angry and like vindictive feeling, you know, I didn't know how to process anything. And then the person that I was dating after that was being so good to me. And I had never felt that before. Like I had never had somebody really give me like affection and listen to me and like support me like that ever. So my husband and I, when we were married.
Did you believe it?
I believed it, but I was so uncomfortable with it.
Got it.
Like I felt like I was being smothered, but I wasn't being smothered. This was the first person in my life
that was truly kind,
that was really loving me. Yeah, like really showing up for me. But my now I understand all of it. At the time, all I could say was like, I need less. Like I need less of this. And that made him feel terrible. Like, what do you mean, like pushing me away for loving you, you know?
Right.
Which now I understand my nervous system has been primed since birth to you're in survival mode. So it's like, it's funny. It's like the opposite. I'm experiencing the opposite of what I should be experiencing. Somebody who's cold and distant, I'm very comfortable with. But somebody who is being intimate or like trying to reach me makes the alarm bells go off in my body. So the only way, without awareness around that, the only thing that I could do was push it away, right?
Yeah.
And then I would feel guilty about that. So I self-sabotaged that relationship, right? It was like, I fucked it up. So all of this is a really long answer, but you're asking, did I need to hear that I was a good person? Yeah, I really did. Cause I've gone through, you know, I mean, I've always tried my best, but I have this deep-seated belief that I'm just not a good person. And that's been there forever, you know, just because of how my parents were.
That's horrible.
To me. Yeah. So that was exactly what I needed to hear, actually. And
so even going into that, you still kind of believe that?
that I'm a bad person.
Because I think there's a difference between I'm a bad person and like I'm not a good person, right? Like, do you see?
Yeah.
But did you believe one of those things going into it still?
I've done so much work in therapy for the last 2 months.
Prior to that.
Prior to this. And but here's what I'll say. I reached a point where I really understood logically that I've genuinely always been doing the best that I could with the tools and the level of healing and the level of self-awareness that I've had.
Right.
So I was able to do that. My ayahuasca journey helped me to feel viscerally, experientially, to feel actual compassion for myself, where I really healed that. So I'll say coming out of that experience, I had a completely new practical level of like, no, I really love myself. I've done the fucking best I could. And holy shit, you went through a lot when you were little, when you were a kid. And like, I mean, I've gone through some shit. My parents were very, very bad people.
I mean, it sounds like it. Holy shit.
Like my mom, if she ever heard this is so funny, she would deny it. She left me on the highway on the side of the road when I was like 12, 7 miles from home, didn't come back for me because I said something saucy in the car, left me there. Didn't come back. I was 12. I could have been kidnapped, murdered. Didn't come back for me. She did that to my brother multiple times.
Did you just find your way home?
I walked backwards the other direction to a friend who lived a couple miles up the road.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, you learned how to be resourceful.
Survival mode all the time, right?
Thanks, Mom.
My mom one time was angry at me and went into my brother's room. We had a pet cockatiel, pulled it out of the cage, put its hands around its neck while it was screaming, and threatened that if we didn't stop crying, she was going to snap its neck in front of us. Shit like that. Yeah, there's a lot more.
Because that's how you get kids to stop crying.
Yeah, exactly. Kill their beloved pet. Yeah, exactly. They're just,
oh my God.
Yeah, they're psycho.
So let me ask you this then. As you have explored and journeyed and learned all these things and learned more about, say, your mom, dad, whatever their condition is.
Yeah, their condition.
I mean, right? I mean, you did it give you any empathy?
So that's a tough question for me to answer because as I've been going through, like before I did ayahuasca too, before I did my ceremonies, what I'll say is I have tried to practice forgiveness, but I think forgiveness happens in stages, and it also doesn't mean that it doesn't, like, here's what I know. I understand that there's something wrong with my parents, obviously, especially my mom, right? There's like that, as fucked up as it sounds, that is the best she can do. So understand, like logically, I understand like, that's the best she can do, dude. It sucks, but there's no need to carry around bitterness and resentfulness and anger. So, but that's still something I'm working on releasing. Cause like sometimes I'll be able to say like, oh, it's whatever, but if somebody really gets me talking about it, sometimes I still feel like there's that anger. Oh, I just love to like.
So for me, what I've kind of learned for myself in the forgiveness world is that I think when people think of the word forgiveness, right, they think that like you let it go, or you're forgiving that person, right? What I've come to equate it to is that it's more of acceptance.
Yes.
And so for me, forgiveness is acceptance.
Yeah.
I don't forgive and say, what you did or who you are is okay.
Yeah.
Right. But I can accept that's just who they are.
Yeah.
And since I can't control it and I can't make them something that I want them to be, as much as in your situation, as much as I would want my mom to not be a piece of shit and to not have treated me the way that she did.
Yeah.
If you get to a place where you can at least accept it, right? And it is what it is and you can't do anything about it, but you can do whatever you need to do now that you're of sound body and mind,
right,
to be able to move on with your life. To me, that's what forgiveness is.
Yeah.
It's not saying what you did is okay. It's saying I can accept that it happened now and I'm not going to let it control me anymore.
Yeah.
I think to me, that's the definition, or if it's not, it fucking should be the definition of forgiveness, right? Because I think the word forgiveness gets such a bad rap. you know, because it's like, well, I'm never going to forget what that. No, you fucking
definitely
shouldn't.
Not.
You shouldn't fucking forget what somebody did,
but
right?
Stop carrying it around.
Right. And I think that is acceptance, right? And I steal all that from AA, right? Because like that's the one thing that I really learned was that acceptance, right? And not being pissed at myself for the years that I lost. Right? Because of my drug addiction and my alcoholism and all the people that I hurt and all the things that I did.
Yeah.
At some point I just had to accept that was what happened.
Exactly.
And I can either continue moving forward on a better path and try and help people and help myself, or I can just live in that pile of shit that happened to me, for me. I did it, whatever it is, right? Because there's 3 different piles of shit, right?
Yeah.
I can either choose to move on and accept or not.
Right.
And I think the people like you that have went on this journey and this path and learned to start moving forward, that is forgiveness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're forgiving yourself too.
Bingo.
And getting to accept and move on.
Especially self-forgiveness has been a huge lesson because I'm really hard on myself.
Sure.
Like I've been, that was really also a coping mechanism that was one of the only ways I got approval, and approval was as close to love as I got when I was a kid. So it's like straight A student, #1 figure skater, winning karate competitions, like stuff like that, like making a good art project, winning a contest, winning a spelling bee type of stuff. So it's funny because I remember even like my ex saying, "You're so hard on yourself." I was like, what?
Yeah.
I don't even understand. Like, what do you mean? Like, I didn't notice all those things. But when you're really hard on yourself, you're really hard on other people. There's no room for mistakes or error. And also,
if you hold yourself to a high standard, why the fuck doesn't everybody else?
And to make that even a deeper complex, for me, perfection as a kid was safety. I couldn't predict what my mom was going to do. If I left a crumb on the counter, she would like flip the fuck out. I was like in big trouble, like crazy punishments. Okay. Like very severe punishments for stuff. If I left a cupboard door ajar 2 inches, it was like, she would flip the fuck out. So to me, being as close to perfect as humanly possible.
Was there physical abuse that came with that then obviously as well?
Not, my dad held my brother down several times. My grandpa remembers this better than me. My dad has been physical with my brother. He used to block me into space. That's another thing that like will make my chest like block me into spaces and like point his finger in my face stuff. I do remember actually, you know what? This might've been the same time my dad was like punishing us for something. And there was a huge fight that became physical. He was like pinning my brother down and raising his hand. And I ran out of the house without shoes on. I ran like a mile down the road. I was just like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I don't know how old I was. I was probably like, I don't know, 13 or 14, maybe 14 probably, I think. But I remember I ran down the road and I was having like a I was hyperventilating, and I just one of my neighbors down the road had their light on. And I just went and banged on they were probably so freaked out. I was like banged on their door, and they like open the door and look at me, and I'm like bawling I don't have shoes on, and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Can I use your phone?" And I had a friend's phone number memorized, and they came and picked me up and like just took me away from the house. And I don't remember what happened after that. But
oh my God.
So stuff like that. My mom hit me with a spoon a bunch of times.
With a spoon,
like a wooden spoon,
like a big wooden spoon. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, but like I remember being backed into my closet, and she was like smacking me with a spoon.
You got cornered a lot.
Fuck. yeah. It was just a nut house.
I mean, how does that not affect you as you like try to have relationships? Like, holy fuck.
Yeah, exactly. So are you familiar with like attachment styles at all? Have you heard that phrase? So I'm going to maybe not do the best job explaining all of them, but essentially, so attachment theory is how the way that you relate to adults in romantic relationships, especially, but as an adult, is actually molded within the first like 6 months of your life based on how your caregivers tended to your needs. So you learn this really early. So for example, there's 4 like main categories. So there's secure attachment, which is like, the world is pretty safe, right? People will tend to me if I have needs. I can express my needs and I can listen. People are going to listen. That would be like your parents did a good job with a healthy balance. They weren't helicoptering you or anything like that, but they were there. If you needed them, if you cried, you had food, you had warmth, they would change your diaper. Like they comforted you,
right.
Type of thing. So that's secure. That's what we all strive for. So then there's anxious attachment, which is, they're like anxious. I mean, it's like if you're in a relationship and you notice that you're constantly worrying every change in tonality, if they change their tone or they didn't use an exclamation point, you feel nervous and you're like codependent, basically, more or less. And then there's avoidant attachment, which is what it sounds like, avoidant. I'm uncomfortable with intimacy. I want it. I want to be intimate, but when it gets too close, I get uncomfortable and I need to get away. And then there's...
Sounds like that's what you were for a while.
Well, so it's funny. So the fourth one is called disorganized attachment. And if I'm getting this right, so there's a book by Amir Levine, who's like the guy that wrote the book on it, basically.
Okay.
So disorganized attachment, if I'm getting the statistic right, it's only like 8% of people fall into that category. And it's a very, like, it's a specific type of trauma in childhood that creates that. Okay. So
you're unique.
I'm so special in my trauma, right?
Yeah.
God, what a weird flex to have, right? But so what that is it's like, it's very confusing. So think about it. As a child, your caregiver is actually very scary and unpredictable, but you can't escape. They're the same person that you have to go to for comfort. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you get food or comfort, which I don't really remember ever getting comfort from my parents, but it's this confusing thing where it's like, you need them, right? But also they're abusive and hurtful to you. They're scary at the same time. So what happens to me, this is what I've just learned. What happens to me is I am more comfortable with an avoidant partner because it doesn't trigger my fears of intimacy that I didn't know that I had. So like I'll pick somebody who has either major problems like the Peter Pan syndrome, alcoholic, can't communicate, fear of intimacy, because they keep me safe. My nervous system is not triggered by that, but it makes me anxious. So then I become, well, at some point I need the intimacy and the affection, the attention. I have needs. So then, but I can't get them from this person. So that's the type of relationship I found myself being comfortable in. So when I tell you I left my marriage and I dated that guy who's like really wonderful to me, he's like the love of my life. Still to this day, I'd say that person is the love of my life. And it was such a weird experience for me. I was head over heels for this person and I could not feel comfortable being loved by him. It's fucked up, right? So then what would happen is, but if I'm with somebody who's secure or they're anxious, if they're really showing up, now I'm triggered. I'm not used to that. I'm not used to that. So then I get really avoidant, right? So it's fucked.
You're a shit show.
I'm in trouble, dude. Yeah, I'm in trouble. But now I'm able to actually, now I see it.
Yeah.
So now my job is to okay, I need to know what my triggers are. That sounds so funny, right? It's funny. So 2 girls that I talked to the last couple of days, I told them, I was like, I figured something out about myself recently. I was like, I don't like it when men are I like physical affection. I don't like it when they kiss me on the face or the forehead or the head. I don't like any of that. And they're like, what? I was like, it gives me an ick. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I'm begging for somebody to do that for me. I was like, it triggers me. It makes me want to ghost.
Right.
I'm just like, right. But I didn't realize that before, all I knew was I'm uncomfortable. I feel smothered and I need to get away. But then I would do it really hurtfully, right? Because I didn't know how to communicate anything. So I was just passive aggressive or dismissive or whatever. So, wow, this conversation really went off the rails, but I think we were getting to that because we were talking about your childhood really fucking you up. So yeah, my pick. Good job, Mom and Dad. You really did a stand-up job.
Thanks, Mom.
People want to study me now.
Yeah.
Right? Holy shit. But yeah, I can't remember how we even got on the parent thing, but
I think what I got from what you just said though was the fact of how you've went on this, and I don't want to keep using the word journey, but it is a journey, but that you have been able to learn how to be self-aware. And that's something that I've been trying to work on for the last 5 or 6 years. And something I work on with my coach all the time is I feel like anybody that actually takes the time to learn how to be self-aware are going to end up being the most successful people that you ever meet, because they're able to stop, adapt, and change and pivot when they need to, whether it's in business or it's in their personal life or whatever it is, or it's in their relationship.
Yeah.
Right. Because but if you're not able to be self-aware, or you're not able to learn how to learn that skill, you're kind of destined for failure.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you can't identify, because we all fuck up. Right. Yeah. And we all have triggers, and we all have these things that make us who we are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we're wrong or that we're right or that we're anything. It just is. But if you're going to be around other people and you're going to socialize, and we are a tribal people, and we need to be around other people, and we can't be in business if we don't have relationships, and we can't be in relationships without having connection.
Right.
And so if the way that you're acting is affecting you and another human in a negative way, if we can't stop and be self-aware enough to adjust that behavior, you're just going to keep hopping, right? Whether it's person to person or business to business or job to job or whatever it is, right? Because this all encompasses everything we fucking do.
Yeah.
Everything. And being self-aware is such a hard thing, because you have to become self-aware enough first to learn the fact that you need to become self-aware.
Yeah, it's meta, right? It's very like thoughts about thoughts. Like thoughts. Now I remember where we were going with this, because
I don't. So.
I remember now.
Cool.
Well, we were talking about being hard, is like forgiveness, right?
Oh,
and self-forgiveness.
Wow, that was like an hour ago.
It was so long. I'm like, I told you this is gonna be a long one. So it's like self-forgiveness is so important, and you can't do that unless you stop judging yourself, and then you can stop judging other people. Because I remember we were talking about perfectionism, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're hard on yourself, you're really hard on other people. For me, now looking backwards, whether it was with romantic relationships or friendships or wherever, where I was like, maybe I wasn't totally acting my best self there. It's funny because at first I was really hard on myself about that. Like, why can I not like be easier on people, right? But I realized like, it became easier for me to have compassion with myself, looking on like, dude, look at your entire life up until this point. Like, you did not have it easy. These were protection mechanisms. Yeah. Your brain cannot forget, like your body and everything else. Your central nervous system is like attuned to perfection equals safety. You think you're keeping people safe when you're being hard on them about getting things right. That's the funny thing.
Which is crazy, right?
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like, so just different things like that. As I gained awareness, I was like, how can I be mad at myself? Especially like, because that's my child self in there. That's my inner child that is just like still terrified, in survival mode. Nobody's going to help you. So it's like, that's the part that is unhealed that's acting for me.
Have you ever done TRE?
I don't know what that is. Is that the weightlifting with the bands?
No.
Yes, TRX.
Yeah, that's TRX. Yeah. So my coach had me do this, and I actually went to Mexico and fucking like lived in a house with him for 3 days, where he hypnotized me for like 3 days and was like implanting fucking machines and shit into my brain, and like
he took my kidney.
Crazy. Yeah, he might have. But one of the things that we had to do, and sorry, Clay, if I'm giving away the fucking secrets here that I'm not supposed to fucking talk about, but so TRE is this exercise, and apparently like they do it with like Navy SEALs and like all these people that experience trauma. And so TRE, trauma release exercise, right?
Yeah.
And so you lay down on the ground and you have to stress your body in some way, right? So like you can like put your legs in like a, butterfly position and like, stretch. So like it starts to trigger your muscles or whatever, and you'll start to twitch, and like and so like some people it takes like hours, where you have to lay there for fucking hours before it actually engages. Some people it happens right away, and then once you learn how to do it, you can trigger it. And so like now I know if I squeeze my left like inside my right quad, like I'll start to fucking go. Like I know how to trigger it now.
So it's like a somatic psychosomatic connection or something like that.
And so but then it triggers your nervous system, And that's what made me think of it, because you kept talking about your nervous system,
Yeah.
and so it will start to release all of this trauma that has built up over the years, over the days or whatever. But like, if you've never done it before, it might find like an old football injury in your shoulder, and like your fucking shoulder will start going crazy. And like when I did it for the first time, like, I mean, I started fucking bawling.
Yeah.
Like I was crying, and like, I mean, I was crying like when I was 7, right? When you're like, doing that one, right? Like I did that, and like I don't do that now. When I do it, but then it also like cleanses out your nervous system. So then if you are going to meditate or do a session of some type of whatever, right? Whether it's hypnosis or whatever it is, you're clean. And you're clear. And it's an amazing experience, and you can do it all the time, right? Like you can do it anytime. But the first couple of times you do it, it reminded me of like, not the ayahuasca, but like similar, right? Like just releasing trauma.
Right.
And you don't have to take anything, but you should look it up, is my point.
Yeah.
Just because it's a very interesting experience to continuously have the opportunity to release trauma.
Right.
Right. Where like, yeah, you might have 30 years of pent up shit that might take you a while to let go of.
Yeah.
But it literally like cleanses your nervous system.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of research now. Well, he's done the research and taught it to me.
Yeah.
But like because like I never even understood what the fucking nervous system was. And he starts
the
talking
body
about
keeps
vagus
the
nerves
score.
and all these fucking, whatever. And I'm like, I don't understand what any of this is.
Yeah.
And he's like, just do this. And all of a sudden I'm like,
crying.
yeah. And I'm like, okay.
There's that book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? And it's like our bodies are, it's fascinating. First of all, so intelligent, but it's like a giant record of not only our own pain. This is another thing I experienced with my psychedelic journeys, was like ancestral pain. Like carrying in our DNA, just like our genes are passed down.
Okay.
We're carrying down like pain and grief from like a lineage of our ancestors. It was something, I'll explain that when I get to like my 3rd ayahuasca ceremony, but like, that's the other thing. Like we get passed down every other gene and trait. Like we're also carrying an emotional body from our grandparents, great grandparents, you know? So that was kind of a hard thing for me to understand until I actually felt it. Mm-hmm. But that was also part of one of my journeys that I went through down there.
So all of this, so you just mentioned like when you get to your 3rd, so all of this was on your first
one. Yeah, my first one.
And you did 3 on the same trip?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I did 5 trips actually, but 3 were ayahuasca.
Okay.
So yeah, do you want me to go into my second one?
Sure, let's go to number 2.
Dive in.
Yeah.
So my second one.
But this is all in the same week trip.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Got it. Just making sure.
Psychedelic boot camp.
Yeah.
Okay, is what it was. So my second ceremony was the second night. Same thing, same beginning, temple, 8 p.m.
And is this normal, by the way, that like people do multiple days?
I did a 7-day retreat. They do 21-day retreats.
Oh, fuck me. Okay. I
don't know if I could do 21 days.
All right.
I don't even know if I could do 14, honestly. But so it's like Monday, Tuesday, ayahuasca, Wednesday is a break, Thursday morning, DMT, Thursday night, ayahuasca, all day Friday, San Pedro.
Okay, so everybody's going to wonder, how much does this cost? Not including
$4,000.
Not including travel.
Not including flights and stuff like that.
Yeah, but like once you get there, like they'll do all this for $4,000.
Oh yeah. And they curate every detail. I mean, every detail.
I mean, is it just me or does that seem extremely cheap?
I am going to do it twice a year for the rest of my life, and I don't care how much it is.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know.
Okay, but I mean, it seems very reasonable.
Yeah,
like,
the food there was amazing.
Like in my mind, that's a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And the shamans, I mean, they put so much energy and time and love and intention into the whole process. It's amazing.
Not that you watch any of my shows anymore, Natalie, but like I really want to do this now. So
yeah,
anyway.
You really should talk to me later.
Yeah. Okay, so number 2.
So yeah, my second ceremony, I went in. This was really about. I'm probably not gonna get into super detail about some of the details just because they're personal with other people. But I went into it with more of an intention around understanding my romantic relationships of the past and future. Especially like there's the one relationship that I told you I'm really hung up on about like after I got out of my marriage. And that's been something that's really, and to be totally honest, that's almost the reason I was in Peru. Like that began my spiritual journey, like with that person, that connection that we had. So I went into this one wanting to have understanding, like a little bit more just insight, I suppose, on some of the relationships that I've had. But I also just asked for like general advice and direction. So it was interesting. So the exact same thing happened. First dose, trickles, power here. And then I went down the wormhole again, same thing. And then I ended up in a place that was also a higher dimension. This one was even higher than the place I went before. I don't know how else to describe it, but I was aware that I was in a higher dimension yet. But the visuals were different. So it's funny because how I journaled about it, I wrote that it began as like what felt like Asian pop culture emoji type visuals. Like it was very like pop culture Asian type vibes, like Japanese vibes. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting and different. And then I remember it started showing me masculine figures, not like men themselves, but I don't know how to describe it. It was just shapes that were showing me that it was showing me masculine energy. Okay. So I was like, okay, I understood that it was giving me what I was asking for. Essentially, it's like, here, we're going down this path. But then it kind of took a break and it brought me higher up yet into a place where, again, it was like tons of sacred geometry and beautiful, beautiful shapes and colors, but a lot of Hindu symbols, which I found fascinating because that's not a religion that I've studied at all. Like the Om symbol was very prevalent there.
Something I want to know more about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very fascinating. Like at that point, it was just, it kept just saying enlightenment. It was like enlightenment, like you're here right now. I was like, whoa.
Which is basically what all Hinduism is about, right?
Yeah, it was just like
enlightenment and
you're not, there was no separation between me and divine intelligence. It was this extremely powerful, emotional, spiritual. I mean, I was just like, I don't know how to describe it. I was deeply connected.
Safe.
With divine intelligence. Yeah. I was there. Okay. And there were like Ganesha, like the elephant god was there, very prevalent. There were like long-horned cattle, like very Hindu, Indian symbols, which was fascinating to me. And I was just like there, like kind of enjoying it. And then it began repeating how sacred everything was or everything was. And it would say that over and over, like, this is sacred. It's sacred. And I got into, and it was just showing me and asking me to like honor all of these life forms. And I got very emotional then. It was like this, it was like I was feeling everything that exists. Like I was embodying and I was deeply connected to this life force that is so sacred and ancient and mysterious. And it was just asking me to honor that. And I was feeling, and I remember I just ended up in what I can only describe as a place of worship, which I've never felt that before. I remember I was sitting up and I had my hands in prayer at my face. I was just weeping and I was like rocking back and forth, just like so filled with gratitude and love for being alive. And that shifted into showing me some of the relationships from my past. And like, you know, I was able to see my ex-husband there briefly. And I just like, was like, thank you. I remember just saying, thank you, like you carried me through this very difficult part of my life, you know? And we're like a parent figure almost, like rescuing me from my parents, for lack of better terms. And I saw one of my other exes who were like really good friends now, we're like best friends, but his energy came in kind of like, you know, when a cat like rubs itself on you. Mm-hmm. It was like we were lions and I just felt that energy. I was like, oh, you know, thank you. And I was grateful for that. And then it was showing me the person that I had dated after my marriage that was like really, really meaningful to me, that relationship. And I was just like weeping and like bawling my eyes out. And it was showing me like, it just kept repeating, this is sacred. And it was, this is gonna sound really crazy for me to say, but it was kind of like impressing upon me that like I had been doing this dance with this soul, this person for a long time. Like we've been separating and then coming together, like past life type stuff. And then I was like, kind of like, why, you know, like and it was showing me that we were doing that because it felt so good to reunite, like the union felt so good. And then we would separate. But it also is showing me on a way more macro level that the entire point of existence, in a sense, was this separation and reunion, because that's what feels good. It's like man and woman, you know, or like love, like two people, or coming apart, coming together. It's like, if we didn't have that contrast, it wouldn't feel so good.
Right.
If we didn't have loss, we wouldn't have love. If we didn't have dark, we didn't have light. So, and then it like showed an image of us. And I can't remember if it was calling us children of God or children of love, or I'm sorry, children of life. I could never remember what it was, but it was like showing me an image of, I was up here viewing me and this person in this place. And it was just like
you
saying,
really remember a lot.
Oh
though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember all my dreams too, really vividly.
okay.
So that's probably a practice that's really helped me, like recording that stuff. But I also when I dream, I get pretty lucid a lot of the time, and I make mental notes to myself about what I'm dreaming so I can write it down. Sometimes I don't remember, but yeah, very vivid. But I was just like weeping, I mean, like bawling my fucking eyes out and like just saying, thank you over and over, just showing me how beautiful like love is and how meaningful and how sacred life is and connection is. So I was really just like sitting there in that space for a long time. I'm trying to think if it gets really personal, so I'll probably just leave it at that. But yeah, that was like, this was really fascinating too. So I remember sitting there, it was weird. So I was in lotus position and I noticed that I was like, I had my fingers in between my toes and then I was rubbing the soles of my feet.
You had your fingers in between your toes. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like feeling my body and I was like, whoa, like I exist. And I was really like loving my body, which is really fascinating. I've struggled with eating disorders for like 15 years.
Oh, really?
Like when I was like 18, it started. And then I've mostly got it under control nowadays. But I mean, really for 15 years, like that was like, I was not doing so good. So to fall in love with my body was something like really feeling what I'm made out of. And I remember even touching like the warmth of my chest and my neck. And I was just like, wow, I'm like, I love this thing. Like, this is a gift that I have. Like, holy shit. Like I get this machine that I'm in.
What a revelation.
It's strong and beautiful. And like, it like takes me places. I was just like really touching my body and like really falling in love with my body as a gift, and I was just saying, thank you. And then it was funny. People's names were coming. So this is actually a funny story. I forgot to tell you this. So my name actually at birth was Nikita for a day, which is such a badass name. It means victorious and unconquerable. It's like the coolest name I could probably think of, right? So the story allegedly was that my uncle came into the delivery room after like I was born and stuff. And he was singing like the Chiquita Bananas theme song with Nikita in it. And then they were like, we're not going to name her that. That's going to be annoying. So they changed it to Rebecca. Do you know what Rebecca means, Eric? To tie a knot. It means a snare. That's what my name. So I went from Nikita, which is like badass as hell, to tie a knot, right?
Lexi, don't let Rebecca watch this episode.
What? Sorry, is your middle name Rebecca? I'm not hating on my name, but it was like my name was so badass, right? So it's funny, when I showed up at the retreat center, there's only one female facilitator there. Guess what her name was? Nikita.
Stop it.
And I was like, that was my name. So funny. In this ceremony, it was like, I'm saying ayahuasca gave me, but really that energy, I felt, it says, it gave me back my name. It like was like Nikita. But the funny thing about it is it was saying it in a way where like, I think it might be Japanese culture, when they put san at the end, it'd be like Eric san to like add dignity and stuff to the name. It was doing that with other people's names, like Garrett san. And it was like Nikita san. And I was like, okay, which is so funny. I don't even know, like, I don't know anything about Asian culture, but for some reason that's what it was saying. And then I said, I felt the sacredness and significance of our names. Like that was part of it, showing me like your name is important because we're naming you. We're like giving you importance here. Like you exist with your name, right? So it was really fascinating. So I said, I felt my Nikita name arrive and become very bold. I felt pride in owning the meaning of that name that my parents took away from me. So yeah, it was just funny. It just kind of like, it was
just
like, no, you're Nikita.
Thing they fucking took away.
The assholes. Yeah, just another thing, right? So hilarious. But it was,
sorry.
No, that's hilarious. So it really is. I was like, another thing. So yeah, so that was my second story. Same thing. I didn't feel sick at all. I felt that one. I was like, this is actually a funny story. So I was so high, like at one point, they do 2 doses, right? So after my first dose, I was like, literally the words enlightenment and nirvana were just present in my awareness. I was like, I am sitting there right now. Like, this is so beautiful. And so I was like in that energy. And I heard, I was still present and aware, but I was in such a deep place that I like didn't want to move, you know? It's like when you're asleep and you hear your alarm go off, but you're like so deep asleep, you like can't even move. So they asked if anybody wanted a second dose. And I just sat there because I was like so deep in meditation, having like, you know, I was in my whatever dimension I was in, like really comfortable there. And then I heard them a few minutes later, they're like, the maestros want to know if anybody wants their second dose, a second call. And I was like, okay, I'll go up and get another one. So it's pitch black, right? The facilitators are actually from like me to you. Okay. So, but they're holding these little, you're not turning the lights on in there. That's going to be weird. So they have these little flashlights that they have red tape over. So it's not like, I mean, you can see it glowing over there. It's not lighting anything up. So if you're right up close to it, it's going to give you like that much light. Right. So I like crawl my hands and knees over there. And I'm like looking at the guy, I think it was Luke, one of the facilitators, or maybe it wasn't Luke, it might have been somebody else, but they're like, hi, Becca. And I was like, hi. And he goes, how are you doing? I was like, really good. I was like, really good. And he goes, how strong is the medicine? And I go, it's really strong. As I'm saying that, I'm seeing like a dragon, literally like a dragon just kind of like floating up here. There's eyeballs all over on this wall. And I'm just like, it's really good. And he goes, do you want some more? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, how much? And I was like, literally. So I was like, I don't know, a maintenance dose. And he goes, okay. So he gives me like this tiny little amount.
Right.
So I like went back, just, yeah. But that ceremony was amazing. I felt it was just beautiful. And I felt very, very peaceful and just grateful. And it was amazing. So that was my second ceremony. So, but the next day we did Machu Picchu, and then Thursday morning was a double header. Okay. So we did DMT in the morning and then we did ayahuasca at night. So are you familiar with DMT at all?
Not enough.
Okay.
So teach me. So
DMT, they call it the spirit molecule. There's some really cool documentaries out there about it, actually, if you want to check it out.
Yeah.
Very fascinating.
Yeah.
DMT is, it's 5-MeO DMT specifically. It's from the desert toad called Bufo alvaris. Okay. It's a poisonous toad. If you were to eat the poison, you would die. But you smoke it and you blast off and meet God. So very different thing. But it's DMT is found in like a handful of plants and animals naturally, and it also is released from our brains when we die, I think. Okay, so it's, but what you do is they go and harvest the poison from the toad's glands, and then you freebase it. You put it in you light it up, and then you smoke it. But the thing about DMT is, so first of all, it's a very intense, fast trip. You blast the fuck off. There's no like, I'm sitting there and I'm feeling it. And there's like, it's like, okay, like Houston, we have a problem. Okay. Yeah. But the thing about it is you have to smoke it. You have to smoke enough of it or you're going to have a weird time. And if you don't keep it in your lungs for as long as possible, you're also not going to get there. You are not present in the room. Okay. You're gone to another dimension. Like when I was on ayahuasca or if I eat mushrooms or something, I'm very aware that I'm sitting here. Right. I'm Becca. I'm on a chair. I'm in Peru. DMT, you are gone. Okay. So like you pass out, you like black out and you go on this very short, fast trip. I was really nervous about that because I don't smoke anything. I don't smoke weed. I don't vape. I don't do anything like that. My lungs hate smoke. Hate it. Like I have a very difficult time smoking anything. And I was like, I don't want to have a weird time and I want to have this spiritual experience. So I was like, all right, got myself super centered. This is like 11 o'clock in the morning. So I had one facilitator, Nikita, on this side of me, and we're sitting on our little beds. I'm very well aware that I'm going to pass out and fall backwards. We're prepped. There's pillows, whatever. So then the other facilitator, Theo, was next to me. And he was the one that was like dosing me like with the beaker. Okay. So
were they aware that you had this smoking issue?
I told them. Okay. Yeah. I was like, and they're just like, do your best. Right. I was like, okay. So I trusted that my body was going to let me do it. So Theo's next to me, he comes over with the beaker and I'm like, okay. So he's like, just take little sips first. And then when you feel yourself going, like hammer, throw it back. And I was like, okay. So I'm like filling my lungs and my body instantly is just like, you know, that meme of the kid that's trying not to cough. Oh yeah. That's me. Right. So I take my first sips. Instantly, everything went holographic. It was crazy. I can still picture it. The ceiling was made of bamboo It was like yellow, crazy cartoons, like hyper technicolor. I could see through everything. I could see everything as energy. Like I could see through Nikita. I could see through Theo. Everything was just crazy color energy. Okay. I was like, holy fuck, but I'm still trying to like breathe, get this shit in my lungs.
Yeah.
So I get it in my lungs and so then I'm like, oh, here we go. Like my eyes are rolling back. I'm going down. The last thing I hear, this is going to be a crazy story for you. Buckle up, everybody. I remember Theo's voice just saying, hold your breath, hold your breath, hold your breath as I'm like going down. So I get it in my lungs. I close my eyes. Everything is like going down and I'm like holding my breath. Everything in my body is like kicking and screaming to breathe. It's like, wants to cough. And I realized so there was like, so visually, wherever I'm going, there's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was this like gold shiny, it was like there's lime green in it, but like gold shiny, beautiful mandala made of like butterfly wings or like moth wings and eyeballs. And it was like coming in and out of itself. And like I was seeing this thing, but my body was trying to cough. So it was like, it was going as I'm like resisting.
Yeah.
And then I realized I was dying. I was literally experiencing my own death. And so I had this tiny shred of consciousness left where Becca was in there. And when I say tiny, I mean the grain of a mustard seed was left of me in there. And my ego self, my body was like, no, like cough and breathe. You're going to die. And I was like, something in me was just like, surrender. And it just said, surrender. And I was like, but I'm dead. So it's like two things. Like, but I'm dying. And it's like, let yourself die. And I let everything stop. I let my lungs stop. I didn't take a breath. Imagine you're underwater and you realize you're going to drown and you just let yourself drown. That's what it was. I let everything stop. And as soon as I did that, that mandala I was telling you about, like blew up in the most beautiful thing. So it was the most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced in my life. I was like, I'm fucking dying. And then this mandala explodes. And it's like, I don't know how to describe this because visually it's very difficult to, but it was like everything was coming in and out of itself. And as soon as I surrendered to dying and I literally let myself die, the most peaceful, it was like this blissful moment where all this bright white light like explodes forward. And it's like this moment of peace. I do remember also 3 beings being kind of to my right, and they were shapeless, formless, but there were like 3 beings. It was like they were ushering me through this passageway of death. And as soon as I let myself die, it shot me back out. It was like going through a wormhole or like a black hole. I die. And then instantly I was coming back and I literally relived being born. I went through my birth. This is definitely gonna make me cry. It was so beautiful. It was like the most beautiful thing that I've ever experienced in my life. Like, I literally was like an infant. Like I could feel my body even in the fetal position. And I came out like screaming and crying. And I remember wiping my face and feeling like the placenta and my first tears. And as I came out of the womb and I saw light again, just like dying, it's amazing. So I see light again. And as an infant, I felt what it was like taking my first breath, like gasping my first breath of air coming out of the womb. And then having my first infant cry, you know, when you were telling me about your TRE and when you were crying like a kid, like how you would cry, I cried like an infant. I had my first cry, my first breath, and I was sitting there and I could feel literally like what it was like. If you could remember what it was like to come out of the womb as an infant and like you're here in the world for the first time, this was the most beautiful, powerful experience I've ever had in my life. It was so incredible. It was so crazy. I was just like, it was funny. It also showed me that death and birth are the exact same thing.
That's exactly what I just got from that story.
It's literally the same. You just pop out on the other side. It's an equal opposite side of the experience. Death is not scary. It's scary to die. Like it was scary to do it. But as soon as I surrendered to doing it, it just turned into rebirth. Like it was it showed me this cycle of life and how beautiful it is. And I was like, oh my God, like dying is beautiful too. But being born, like what was really fascinating about this So I came in, I remember just like weeping. I was like crying my eyes out and like laughing. And it was just, I was hit with the miracle of being alive, something we can't remember when we're that little, right? Yeah. And I remember sitting there and I had my hand, one hand on my heart and one on my belly. And I was just like feeling my heart beating. I was like literally bewildered that I was here. Like, oh my God, I'm here. Like I get to do this life thing. The other really fascinating thing was I felt like when I say ancestors, I don't even necessarily mean like my relatives, like grandma and grandpa and stuff like that. I felt my ancestors, meaning my lineage of what spirit is, like my entire, like what all of life is, the life that I came from, right? All of life was like ushering me in. It was like celebrating me being here. And I also, it's really interesting because Nikita was next to me. And I remember I reached out and I held her hand because I was like kind of fluttering back in and I knew it was her. But I remember thinking it was like spirit was giving me this gift of, hey, this is what it feels like to be welcomed into the world with like beings that love you, you know, which I didn't get to feel when I was born.
Wow.
So I like I'm going to cry now too, but it was just so beautiful. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for that experience. Like that changed my life.
How healing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the most, just so beautiful. And I really just fell in love with like myself, my being, you know, I had so much compassion for myself there, like, and just loving myself, like not just, it's like, I'm life. I am God. I am an extension of this beautiful, creative, mysterious life force. Like I need to honor that. Like, holy shit, I've been given a life. I've been given a body. So it's so funny because I came out of that experience and, they gave me fruit. I had like this little cup of mango and I laughed. So in my head, everybody just went through what I just went through. I was like, everybody in the room just did that, right? So I like eat the mango and I was like, this is like baby food. She probably had no idea what I meant. So then I went outside and I like stepped into the grass. There's like, I was just like still crying with gratitude. I like stepped in the grass and I was like, whoa. And there's like butterflies flying around and everything. And it was funny because I cracked a joke. I was like, first day of our lives, huh, guys? I was like, everybody just went through that, right? But like, which is just so comical. Because like, even if you didn't go through what I went through, it still is like a rebirth. Those experiences in general are like a rebirth experience, right? It was so funny. I was like, first day of our lives, huh, guys? Come to find out later, like one of the facilitators came over and he was like, that does not happen to most people. Like that was a really special, unique experience that you just had. And I was like, whoa. And another thing I remember I came out of it and I looked over at Nikita and I just go, you only need to do that once, huh? I was like, holy shit. It was so cool.
Wow.
And so here's another funny thing about that. I remember the moment that I was born. So I died, right? And then I remember the moment that I literally came, like the moment, like, like coming, I'm like opening my eyes. And there was this the most beautiful song I've ever heard playing. Like there's like, da, 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 da. I can't make it, but it was like that. And there were flutes. And afterward, I asked the guy for the playlist. I was like, I need that playlist. I have to hear that song again. And I have combed through every song. I couldn't find it. And I just realized, I was like, I think that was part of my experience. It was like, you know, when they talk about like a chorus of angels or something like that, right? Like it was this beautiful song, the sound of entering the world that I got to experience. And oh my God.
So that was just something that was part of
my trip.
Yeah.
In my
experience. Wasn't in the background.
No, they were playing music. They were playing music. Not that song. Yeah. Because I can hear it in my head exactly what it was. I still can. But I couldn't find it on the playlist. I've combed through every second.
And you're not the savant musician that can go recreate it.
I can't go write it. Yeah.
No, damn it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it was so beautiful. So that was nuts because it was, I don't know how long it was, Eric. It was probably only like, it was less than 15 minutes. Yeah. But that
sounds like it was long enough.
I died. I was reborn. Like however much time that took. So that was so cool, man. That's
so fucking interesting to me. Like we talked about it in the beginning, but like the whole death thing. And like I literally just you telling that story for whatever reason, like that gave me comfort.
Yeah.
Like your story gave me comfort and I didn't even get to fucking experience it. Now it makes me mad because I want to experience that. But then I go and I'll be like, God damn it, I wanted Becca's fucking experience, right? Like that's what would piss me off. But that just literally you telling that story gave me some weird, like not goosebumps, but like some just like weird, overwhelming in my chest, like comfort of like, that was what I was looking for as a conversation and as you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's fucking weird.
I can tell you.
Thank you.
Like really, thank you for listening.
Like, thank you. Like that's like, we don't get to have those conversations very often with other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, go on.
No, absolutely. It's crazy because it's hard to describe. Like when I tell you I died and I re-experienced being born, that's not a metaphor.
Yeah.
I literally went through exactly what it is going to be like to die.
Right.
It did that. And like, it was, so what came out, it was like, if anybody wants to know, I'm like, it's terrifying, but you just don't resist it. And you just surrender to it. Like surrender has been such a huge theme for me in my life, like the last year or so. There's a lot of power in surrender. And again, surrender is like not giving up. It's surrendering to a higher power that has a divine intelligence that's part of us and trusting that is going to carry you, you know? So like dying.
It's also acceptance.
It's acceptance, right? Acceptance, but also like trusting that something else is in control.
Right.
Obviously it is. Again, I don't eat food and then tell my body like, okay, here's what to do with the zinc and the carbohydrate. I don't know what's going on in there.
Right.
But something else that designed me is like, I know exactly what to do for this. But if I cut my hand, it's like, don't worry, we'll fix you up unless I cut my finger off.
All of that is fucking crazy though.
Fucking nuts. It's intelligence, right? That's what God is.
Have you seen that Pete? Oh, God damn it. I know, like, I shouldn't do this.
Is it the comedian?
Yes.
My friend Johnny that I have sushi with at 7:30, so we're still good. We have time.
Yeah.
But he always talks about, he's like, I can't quote it because I can't remember, but he says the comedian's always talking about the universe or something. He's like, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, that's exactly how I feel.
It's Pete Holmes.
Yeah, that's it.
Have you heard it?
He played it for me because I always talk about existentialism and we're like, what the fuck is that? Like, how are we alive?
Hold on, let's see if we can, because we won't be able to get on screen, but here we can listen to it.
Yeah.
Created the universe. Some people think nothing created the universe, which is the funniest guess. And then nothing people make fun of the God people. They say God doesn't exist. I'm like, okay, maybe. But you know what definitely doesn't exist? Nothing. That's the defining characteristic of nothing, is that it doesn't exist. So what are we talking about? Either you think it's God, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, and science can't prove, or you think it's nothing, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph,
exactly.
and science can't prove. But I think we can all agree, if your nothing sometimes spontaneously erupts into everything, that's a pretty goddamn magical fucking nothing, you guys.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's actually not the clip I was looking for.
There's
like
another one though where he's like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. I love that. And what I love too, like not to go off topic, but like, thank God for people though, like that can take amazing conversations like that, put it into humor.
Yeah.
So that people can actually listen and relate.
It's accessible.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like some people are going to watch this and listen to this and be like, okay, that bitch is
She's
crazy.
Full of shit. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And like, and others are going to be like, oh my God, I totally relate to that and I can connect and whatever. Yeah. But some people need a Pete Holmes.
Right.
Right. Or somebody to explain it like that so that they can actually.
It creates an opening.
Yeah.
Where you go, oh, maybe, yeah, that makes sense, right?
And I think that it goes back and circle back to when you were talking about. I'm trying to remember how to talk again. I've never not talked this much in an interview. No, I love it. Okay, it's just I've never not talked in an interview this much. But it goes back to the conversation in the beginning about like religion.
Yeah.
Right. And how what you believe in God and all and what it means and that it's a word.
Right.
But that. Having that opening to listen to something else just because you were taught something at a young age
doesn't
mean that it is fact.
Exactly.
And if people would at least be willing to listen and to talk to other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a big part of, it's one of the reasons that like I do this as well, is because I want to talk to people that have these different perspectives of life, right? Because we all have different perspectives. We all come from different places. We're all taught different things, right? But when you get so centered into what you think is truth, right? And you're not willing to listen to something else or someone else to learn, to be able to have that little door open, to be able to have that moment where you go, oh, right?
Yeah.
I think that is a large amount of what life is about, right? I think we're constantly supposed to be learning.
Right.
We don't fucking know anything, to your point, right? Like we don't fucking know anything.
Yeah.
We don't know how the blood, like, yeah, we got smart scientists and like, there's an atom and there's a
what is an atom?
You don't fucking know what that is. You fucking made up a word for it.
Yeah.
And, you know
like
what I mean?
Quantum physics, when you're like, we observe something and it behaves different. You're like, what?
Yeah. Like, and I understand that we can understand it conceptually.
Yeah. But we don't understand why. Who made these rules?
Right.
Who invented this? Like, who made there's.
And I don't think it is a who.
What? Yeah, it's not exactly. It's not a who. That's the other thing. Personifying God really detached me from the concept of God.
That's what gets me tied up.
Yeah,
is the personification of it. I get fired up, and again, this is what I love because this is going to piss people off.
Yeah,
but like
blasphemy. You're like, okay,
but it's not.
No,
right? But it is the personification of what you said in the beginning. Of there's a bearded man looking down, and he had a tablet, and blah blah blah. Right, like. That's the hard part that I don't wrap around.
Yeah.
But all the other stuff, like it all makes sense. Like it's kind of like simplest explanation, right? Let's go back to Occam's razor. You know what I mean? Like probably is.
Yeah.
Sorry. I
love this. What I was thinking about was, so if anybody is open to some books that have really tied these concepts in for me.
Yeah, I am. So tell me.
So, Conversations with God, book 1 by Neil Donald Walsh.
You were going to say Neil Patrick Harris.
I was. Well, not Harris, but I was going to say, I was like, that's not the right name, right?
By Doogie Howser, MD.
He's a really famous writer. So yeah, Conversations with God, but book 1, that's the only one I've read, so I can only speak to that one. Okay. By Neil Donald Walsh. Phenomenal book. When I read it, I was like, everything clicked. I was like, oh my God. I was like on fire reading this book. I was like bursting with excitement.
And you wanted to tell everybody about it.
I wanted to tell everybody about it.
Isn't that the best? Isn't that the best part about reading a book that you just love so much? You have
to read it.
Yeah. You haven't read it? You fucking idiot.
Oh my God. Peasant. Okay. So that one's really good. Then, so I've been really into metaphysical interpretations of biblical scripture.
Hold on. I have to write this down.
Please.
Because otherwise I'll forget. So, and since we're taking a moment, write it down, dipshits.
Write it down because you want
Conversations with God, book 1.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Neil, Neale.
Nobody else probably wrote it, so.
We gave you explicit instructions.
Yeah. Next.
Neil Donald Walsh. Okay. Then the next book, there's going to be a couple. Anything, honestly, by Neville Goddard. So, for example, hold on. There's something about imagination. I don't have my phone on me.
It's all right.
Anything by him, honestly, is going to be good. At Your Command. That's the first one.
At Your Command.
At Your Command by Neville Goddard. And then The Game of Life. Actually, I recommend all 4 books by her. There's the complete works of Florence Scovel Shinn. These books, so it's really fascinating. I had this really, really bad resistance toward Christian religion. Yep. Anything that was like the Bible, just because of how traumatized I was by it as a kid, right? So I was always even using the word God. It's funny. I had
Do you still now?
No, and I'm going to tell you why. Yeah. I do against organized religion and dogma, but it's so, again, those are different interpretations of the Bible. So that's what we're going to get with this. It started by, like, I kind of was like, fuck all that. I'm not interested. I don't want to hear it. But then I started exploring consciousness and existentialism, and religion is, that's not separate from it. Right. So, but I read something that said to replace the word God with the universe and see how all that stuff reads. And then I was like, oh, because I started really getting into like law of attraction and like thoughts become things sort of concepts. So when I did that, I was like, oh, okay, now I'm more comfortable reading the word God without thinking bearded, judgmental man in the sky.
Yeah.
Right. So that was like piece one.
Yep.
Then I started reading these books like The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, and At Your Command by Neville Goddard, and Conversations with God, and a bunch of different other books. But what they do in there, it's really fascinating. I was kind of surprised because they started referencing a lot of biblical scripture, but they were metaphysical interpretations of scripture, as in it was like a guide to creating your reality with your own consciousness. And I started reading the scripture as they interpret it. And I was like, whoa, I was like, holy shit, the Bible is kind of sick actually, because I'm reading it different.
Right.
So it's hard. We're not going to get into a deep conversation because I'll be missing, I'll be miscommunicating what I want to say. You have to really read it for yourself. But as I was getting into those books, I was like, damn, okay. So all of it's fascinating because all these different like religions, if you get rid of the punishment part and the dogma and the good and bad and evil and all those ideas, they're really just talking about creation and the power of the mind. Like even how they talk about like the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit. This isn't like a man, it's son. And it's like they explain it in a different way that ties in the concept of consciousness. You guys are just gonna have to like do your own research on this because it's really hard for me to explain. Yeah.
But to people that are religious, this is gonna sound blasphemous.
They might think it's blasphemy.
Yeah.
But it's funny. You feel truth, right? Like when I was reading these, I was like, this is true to me.
Yeah.
And people might not feel that. Right?
Yeah.
If that's your journey, that's okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't change anything. Whether I live a devout Catholic until I die or I go off the rails, I'm still going to die in that most blissful way and nothing bad is going to happen to me. I don't believe that there's a hell that we're going to burn in.
Right.
I think that hell is a descriptive word it's a metaphor for what we create in our human life here by how we think and how we choose to live.
That is exactly what I was just going to fucking say.
Natural
it's
consequences.
What we create now.
Exactly.
We live in our hell if we choose to.
Right. That's why Jesus talks about heaven on earth. He's like, first you have to access the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Literally, that's what he says. This is when I say metaphysical like descriptions or interpretations of scripture, it'll rock your world. Like now I'm like, holy shit, whoa. And like what Jesus taught was like so good when you read it that way. So just check those books out. The Game of Life and At Your Command are like
Lexi,
this
make sure
big.
you cut this up as a clip just so we can post the shit out of it and we can piss off the most fucking people.
Are people gonna like, don't worry, they can't get to my house. I'm too far away.
You're too far away.
Just try. And I don't get mail at my house. If you want to send hate mail, good luck. I live in the woods, dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
So cool. Well, I mean, really the only thing, how much time we have? We got a little bit of time.
All I want to do is I want to make sure we get another minute and a half so we can hit the 2 hour mark.
Well, we're definitely gonna have that because I have my third ayahuasca experience.
Shit. All right. Third ayahuasca. Okay.
This one's intense. Okay. So thanks for listening, by the way. I know it takes a lot of emotional energy to listen to something like this, and it's like a lot.
Dude, here's the thing that's really cool, and like, and I don't talk about this a lot, but like, and I do these often, right? Like we've done 80, 90, 100 maybe of these, right? Yeah. And I'm not like the guys that are trying to pump out virtual podcasts just to say that I did one and whatever, like to get numbers and whatever. Like I've done every single one of my episodes in person with a human sitting in front of them so I could have a connection with the person.
Yeah.
I will not fucking do them on Zoom. I will not I just won't do it. I'll figure out how to get you to fly in or I'll fly to you or whatever it is. Like I want to sit with you. I will sit with somebody for 20 minutes and my fucking brain will shut off. And I just staring at him. I'm like, were you still fucking talking?
This is
like,
so boring.
holy shit. And then I start like sympathizing with the audience. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, if I just fucking zoned out, like what the fuck? But like, I have sat here for 2 hours completely engaged and like connected into this conversation. And like, honest to God, thank you for that. Because like, that's why I want to do this, right? Yeah. This is how you build friendships. This is how you build relationships. This is how you build connections with people. Yeah. And like, this is what's fun to me. So anyway, go on with number 3.
Good. I'm glad that it's good for you because I know it's a lot. I'm like, man, these are long stories and they're so personal. It is kind of like sharing a dream with somebody where they're like, to you, it's so interesting. You're like, I hope you're interested. So I told you like my first 2 ceremonies were very blissful. I didn't get sick. I mean, people were puking around me and I was just like, right? I was like in a state of bliss and nirvana. So on the third one, to be honest with you, I almost felt a little cocky. I was just like, I'm going into it like ayahuasca loves me. Like I'm not getting sick. Like everything's fine. So I went into the temple, same thing, starts at 8 p.m. And the first dose I took, as soon as I swallowed it, I was like, something is afoot.
Really?
I knew it. The way that it tasted to me, I was like, uh-oh. This is different for some reason. And it's not like it tastes good, but to me, the 2 nights before, it just tasted like sour molasses, but not like that bad. Like just kind of like molasses, actually. It wasn't that bad. This time I tasted it and I was like, oh, that was not so good. So whatever, I go sit down, 30 minutes goes by and I feel nothing. I'm just like, and I took a pretty big dose, like this one. So then they call for second dose and you go up and they're like, how are you doing? I was like, I'm good. And they were like, do you want a second? How strong is the medicine? I was like, I don't feel anything at all. I had some very light visuals happening. Okay. Like barely. I would not even call them visuals. Like, so they're like, well, do you want a second dose? I was like, yeah. And they gave me kind of a fat dose because I said I didn't feel anything, which was true. I go back to my seat. I sit down. I remember I told you like before I was in lotus position, really good posture. And I just felt so good. I blast the fuck off into this place, right? I'm starting to like go, but I am not. It was like I was so detached from my body. I didn't know if I was sitting up or laying down. I was like really disconnected. And it started, remember that I told you the wormhole was like made of tiles?
Yep.
So it started like that. Not in the wormhole though. It was weird. I remember a structure that went up like this that was made of the tiles and it was like in this room. And it started like that, with colorful, but then all of a sudden, this big wave of gray and black just washed over it and turned it gray and black. And I was like, oh. And then all these little devils started appearing. And I was like, uh-oh, I don't know where I am. Mom, can you come pick me up? Like, I didn't know where I was. I was like, mom. Not my mom. Yeah. She left me on the side of the road. Right?
Someone's mom
can somebody else? Exactly. So I'm like, wait.
Sorry, that was horrible.
No, it's so funny. I actually almost made my own joke and then you said it, which was way better. Not my mom. My mom's not going to pick me up. She probably left me there.
Probably.
So that's where she left me, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, but I wasn't getting, like, some people get really nervous about their psychedelic. Oh no, like they'll resist it. That's when you have a bad time. I didn't resist it at all. I was just observing. I was like, I haven't been here before. This is kind of weird. Right. So all of a sudden, it was almost like I was in that might not be true. It didn't feel like I was in an elevator, but for lack of better terms, all of a sudden I descended and remember before I said I was in these higher states of consciousness, very clearly I was in very high dimensions, high states of consciousness. This dropped me down into what felt like a basement level. And it was like
hell.
It was like hell. It felt like hell. It was like this weird complex maze and there were like trolls and like gnome faces coming out of the walls and stuff. And like my visuals were so strong that when I opened my eyes, I couldn't see. All I could see was the maze that I was in, the trolls and all that. And I was like, what the fuck? Like there was no escaping. I could not see. I was just there. There was no way to get out of it. There was a deafening, like vibrating, humming sound, like that's all I could hear. And I was just like, what the fuck? And there were like mechanical gears and like, it was like a machine underground. And so I was calling it like the mechanical underground in my head. I was like trying to describe it to myself. I was like, what the fuck is this? Where am I? And so I'm there and it just went on and on and on. And I was like so lost. I was confused. I was disconnected. It was just, this is how I felt. Yeah. Like, just like this. I was like, what is going on? Whereas before I was in this place where like, I was in direct contact with God. I was in direct contact with like divine intelligence. We were there. Like I existed. I could communicate. Here, nobody could reach me. I was like lost. And I even remember thinking I must've done something wrong. I even remember sitting there and I started to apologize. I was like, I'm sorry. Like, did I do something wrong? Like, I felt like I got kicked out of heaven, like a fallen angel that was just like, now I'm in the mechanical, hellish underground with the trolls and the gnomes. Like, I guess I live here now. So I was so confused. Then at some point, I remember coming back to my body. I must have been moving around. And I was like, I remember just thinking like, oh my God, I can't get comfortable. And then I realized I was going to get sick. And I was like, oh shit. So at first I was like trying to like lay over on my side, and that didn't feel good. Nothing felt good. And I remember I was like, I'm supposed to be sitting up, but I couldn't make myself sit up. I was so sick and uncomfortable. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to puke. So it's pitch black, right? I'm like feeling around for my bucket for the first time. And I like grab it and I'm just like, blah, puking my brains out. Okay. Like it takes a lot to get me to puke. And I was just puking my brains out. And I was just sitting there like, oh my God, I felt so sick and I couldn't see. And everything was just I'm in the underground still. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And I just thought, this is never going to end. And then I was starting to have thoughts like, I couldn't remember why I was there. I was like, what is ayahuasca? What was it for? I was having these crazy thoughts like, I felt like I was doing it wrong. Like I was doing ayahuasca wrong. And I was like, did I forget? Like, and then I started being really hard on myself. I was like, I am wasting this whole ceremony. I did it wrong. I'm not getting any spiritual awakening out of this. Like I fucked up. Right. So I remember, the guy that was to my right, his name is Tanner. And we had kind of like hit it off. And the guy next to me too was also great. I was between two awesome people, but Tanner was to my side. And he had gotten up and was like over in this other area for a while. And then he came back. And I remember I was just like defeated. I'm just like sitting there with my bucket of puke, just like dying. And I remember in the dark, because you're not really, you don't talk to each other, right? It's like a very sacred space. You're not, but he like whispered over, he's like, Becca, how you doing? And I was like, I'm doing rough, dude. I'm like, I'm doing so rough. He's like, really? I was like, I'm so sick. And I was like, I'm lost. I'm lost. And I feel like really disconnected and I'm confused. And he's like, I'm like, earlier, I just wanted to reach over and hold your hand. And he's like, you should have asked. So he like reaches over, like holds my hand and is like rubbing my shoulder. And I was like, okay. So that felt good. And I was just sitting there, like he was just holding me for a while. So I'm like sitting there kind of trying to relax. Like I'm touching somebody else. That's grounding. And I'm just feeling like the comfort he's sending me. And then the maestros, like the shamans, start asking, how is everybody feeling? Because they're always checking in, because this goes on for hours, right? And they will sing and run ceremony until the last person is done, okay? So I feel like I'm kind of coming down. And as they're checking in, everybody else pretty much was like, I'm coming down. It's done. I'm done. So I sat up. I let go of Tanner's hand and I sat up and I closed my eye. Oh, and that was another thing. Actually, two things. So I was sitting there. So Tanner and I are in silence for a while. He's holding my hand. And then I just go, Tanner. And he's like, yeah. And I go, I think I have permanent brain damage. But I meant it like 100%. I was like, I have permanent brain damage. I'm like, I've gone full retard. Like there's no coming back from this. Like I'm in trouble. So we like laugh about it. And then he's like, well, maybe, I was like, I can't make sense of anything. I'm like, I can't make sense of my trip. And he goes, well, maybe it'll make sense later. And I was like, okay. So I let go of his hand. I sit up and I close my eyes. And all of a sudden I blast off again. I thought I was coming down. Yeah. I was not. So I'm like, holy shit. But it didn't bring me back to the mechanical underground place. Right. It brought me up again to a different place entirely from the two ceremonies before. But the visuals were, this is kind of weird to describe, but this is just what it felt like to me. It felt like everything was like ornate rugs, like very expensive, beautiful rug texture, like carpet and stuff. And the images were all like orange and black monarch butterfly wings. Like that was the prevalent pattern for whatever reason. So I was sitting there and I was like waiting, like what's going to happen here? And all of a sudden it made sense. It showed me that it made me relive my childhood from my soul's perspective. So my first whole half of that trip was little Becca as a soul feeling lost in this hellish place, disconnected. Nobody was coming. Nobody could help. And I just felt like I was being punished. I was in hell and I didn't understand why. Like it even reminded me of when I had said to myself, I was like, I'm sorry. Like, did I do something wrong? That started to make me cry because I was like a little girl that's like, why are you guys treating me like this? You know, like, did I do something not understanding? And it was just like deafening, loud, constant chaos and pain and feeling lost. And there was nobody was going to come comfort me. Nobody could hear me. Right. So it was really interesting. So it showed me that. And then I just started to cry and it brought me back to a moment. This is so funny because this was not one of the worst moments of my childhood, but it obviously was very significant. It showed me a scene. I remember this actually happening. The oldest I could have been was 4, but I think I might've been as young as 3, possibly. I was at a shopping mall and I was with my dad, and it was the first time I was ever going down an escalator, and he didn't take me down the escalator. He just got on the escalator and went down. And I was just like standing at the top of the escalator, like,
dude, your parents suck.
They suck so bad. They suck so bad.
Jesus Christ.
Right? And I just stood there bawling my eyes out like, well, I'm like 3 or 4 years old. I don't know how to go down an escalator. He didn't even wait. And then he just stood there at the bottom. And I remember a stranger, this lady coming over. Obviously, I remember feeling her compassion. And I was crying and she like picked me up. She was like, what's wrong? I can't remember if she picked me up or if she held my hand. But either way, I just remember like this strange lady. I'm just like, she's going to help. And that was the first moment, I think. This is what it was showing me. It just showed me like, your parents are not going to take care of you. And that was so heavy.
Yeah.
That moment. So it like showed me that, and I was like, okay. And that was the moment where I was like, bitch, you need to take care of yourself. And I think that's where a lot of this began, was like, I don't need your help then, you know?
Right.
Like I have to take care of myself. They're not going to show up for me. So it showed me that exact scene. And then it started showing me, because I've struggled with eating disorders. I used to sleep so much when I was a kid. And I think it was just because, my nervous system was constantly so raw. Mm-hmm. I was exhausted. And that lasted for a really long time. But my dad wouldn't even let me sleep. He'd like come in on the weekend. Rebecca, get up. Time to get up. And like wouldn't let me sleep. And I was just trying to avoid chaos, I think, in my house. Like if I was awake, it was dangerous.
Right.
You know, it was like if I stayed asleep, I'm safe here. So it was showing me that, and then some other things. I've had back problems as an adult too. And it was just showing me like, it was forcing me to feel how I actually felt as a child. And it was like, it was helping me understand, like, of course you turned to food. Like you didn't have any other type of comfort. Like, of course your back hurts. It was like, look at how much you've been carrying for so long by yourself, you know, of course you would sleep. Like it was just giving me like, helping me understand all these different coping mechanisms that I had. And then it was showing me like, so this is actually really fascinating. I asked, because remember I told you the first couple of ceremonies, the visuals I was getting was like jaguars and like, you know, I saw a dragon and I saw like cows and like big sacred animals. I even asked, I was like, first of all, I remember I hugged myself. I put my arms around my body and it was like little Becca, like child Becca. And I was just like holding myself and like rocking back and forth and like hugging myself and like apologizing and really giving myself like healing that part and like showing myself compassion and just grieving that. And then from there, it was like, I asked why the monarch butterfly wings, right? I was like, why is this the imagery? Because it was covering everything. And it said, because this is no longer a time that you need to be strong. This is a time to be fragile and beautiful and delicate. And I was like, okay. So I just sat there and I wept and I like hugged myself. So then something really fascinating happened. It shifted from that into, I became a portal, like a doorway. My being became like this doorway to feel other people's pain for them. I was processing like ancestral pain, like shit that people were carrying. And it felt really good, but it also felt very heavy. I mean, I was just like sobbing and like just processing grief, basically. This is hard to describe without understanding. So I was doing that for a while and just like crying and like feeling people's pain. And then it was interesting because I'm not super religious, right? But then I was impressed upon with the concept of Jesus. Like Jesus was a man who came to earth as a man to carry people's pain for them. That was literally what he came to do. And I was like, I understood it because I was doing that. I was like, holy shit, like I'm doing that right now. I was like giving birth to people's pain.
Oh, wow.
And it even reminded me of the scripture, like when Jesus said, cast your burdens on me, like I will carry your burden for you. And it was just so beautiful and meaningful. And I was like really experiencing that. And I was just like crying for people and like loving. And it's just a very beautiful, but very heavy process. So I went through that for a long time. I could have probably kept doing that, but everybody else was like done. And I didn't speak up when they were like, how is everybody doing? I should have said I'm deep as balls still, but I didn't. I just kind of like let ceremony end, but it all came together. So it was interesting because that was, it was like the first 2 trips gave me what I wanted, but the last one gave me what I needed, which was real. When we talk about like inner child healing, I understood what that really meant because I could, like through therapy, I could logically recall events like my mom trying to rip my bird's head off or like doing stuff like that. But I could talk about it in a way that didn't connect with how I actually felt. So when I was like my child self really viscerally feeling that pain. And it was like, oh man. And I was like just holding myself, you know. And I even felt, again, I felt ancestors almost like they were apologizing. They were like, that is not how like miracle beings, like human beings are supposed to be brought into this world. Like they were sorry for me. Wow. They were like, you know, your parents are lost. Like they are lost, you know, that's not what it's supposed to be like. And they were really like grieving my childhood with me, which was so beautiful. So yeah. That's a wrap. Just kidding.
No, that's like, I was literally like, just like, I think I had my jaw was down a little bit as I was listening the whole time. Like,
yeah.
Oh, fuck. What you were able to gain from that experience and to be able to change how you see the world and how you get to see yourself is something that everybody should have an opportunity to be some sort of a part of.
Yeah.
Right? Even if it's not exactly that.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody needs to have the ability to tap in to something like that in their life so that they can be okay.
Yes.
Because there's so many people that aren't okay.
It's so funny that you say that because when I came out of this journey, I was like, especially after my DMT experience where I was like, oh my God, I was like, I cannot believe that there are people that are going to go through this life, live their life without experiencing the gift that I just got to experience.
Right.
Like when in the Bible, when Jesus talks about being born again, that was literally being born again, but literally being born again, like figuratively.
He probably just went and did a bunch of ayahuasca trips and fucking wrote a book.
Right, exactly. Like for real, it was like, holy shit. Like all of those conceptual ideas that have been so bastardized through religion become so experientially real to your soul. And it like wakes you up and you're like, oh my God, it gives you a way. It's a doorway, right? It's just a gift. God created Earth, right? God created everything. God created the ayahuasca vine. So it's like, and he created the toad, right? We're saying I hate saying that, but life gave us these gifts, I like that. Right? Divine intelligence.
I like that. Life gave us.
Yes.
I don't know why that just felt right.
Yeah.
That felt good. Sorry.
I know. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. It's like whatever helps you access truth beyond that.
Yeah.
Because some words block us based on our biased, experiences up until then. But it's like we have these incredible gifts that are plant medicines that are healing spiritually and emotionally, just like food nourishes our bodies. We're gifted fruit and food, right? And that nourishes our bodies and helps us grow. We're gifted these plant medicines from divine intelligence that presents us the gift of a doorway into higher consciousness to give us access to things that otherwise we would have a very difficult time understanding here. It's like this little key. It opens a door. And then it's like you get this glimpse behind the veil, right?
Yeah.
And then life becomes like, I feel so incredibly grateful to be alive now. Like, oh my God, I get to be here.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Getting to live in a state of gratitude is fucking
real gratitude, not just like I'm grateful for, you know what I mean? Like, which I'm not making fun of that either. I do that every day also, but there's something about going through an experience like I just went through. It gives you a profound experience of gratitude.
A much higher level, and not to compare, but like living in a real state of gratitude compared to, it's why I feel fortunate for everything that I went through in my past, came through it, and live in the state of gratitude that I'm not in that state anymore. Like that is it's completely different, not at the same level that you're speaking of, but I think that it parallels.
It's contrast.
Agree?
It's necessary contrast.
Yes.
People who have seen shit are way more interesting and beautiful and loving and empathetic usually if they use that experience, right? To after it, like because of it. I can't
relate to anybody that hasn't had something.
You're like, do you know pain?
Yeah.
Tell me your pain.
But there's so many people that are like, no.
Yeah. Right. And then you're like, cool. How about them bears?
Like, we're not going to be friends.
How about that time that you almost jumped off a cliff?
Like,
right? Tell me about that.
I feel bad for people that haven't experienced some pain, right? Like I don't wish your pain on fucking anybody because that's fucking horrible. Right. But it's part of you now, and you wouldn't have gotten to have this amazing experience without it, right? Because as much as you wish that it wouldn't have happened, if it hadn't, you probably wouldn't have been drawn to do what you've done.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, painful labor precedes birth. Painful labor precedes rebirth.
Yeah.
Like that literally, when you give birth to a child, you have to go through excruciating pain to do so, right? If you write a book, you have to go through the labor of like the pain of writing the book. Yeah. So it's the same thing. Like we go through these difficult, for me, the first one was my divorce. I was so fucked up from that. Like it was bad. And I'm so grateful now, like looking back at that process, because it cracked my heart open in a way that began the healing process. It took years for me to actually like start to, but that was that was the catalyst for me.
Yeah.
And then coming through that, and it's like, okay, now I'm ready for this really deep spiritual experience through plant medicine. And that was like a whole nother level of it. But same thing, you have a near-death experience, you have an addiction, you have a near suicide or attempted suicide. Those are gifts through which, if you decide, like you have to consciously take steps into self-awareness and healing.
And that's the hard part.
It's very hard, right? We're so attached or we're addicted to our pain.
Yeah.
We'd rather be, because it's comfy.
Yeah.
People will choose.
I get addicted to my anger towards people.
Yeah, it's intoxicating. I don't want to give
that up.
Right. Like I'm comfortable here. Yeah. If I let this go, then maybe you're off the hook somehow. Yeah, exactly. But we'll choose a familiar pain over an unfamiliar pleasure, right? They say like you'll choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven, which case in point, like we talked about relationships in the past, where it was like somebody was really good to me and I loved them. And I was like, run away,
right?
Self-sabotage it, sink the ship, something's wrong. Cause that's what you learn. So, but yeah, the human experience is such a beautiful gift, and there are deeper and deeper levels if you are brave enough to surrender, forget that you know anything at all, because you don't, and to just let life show you, let God show you, right? Yeah. Show you what there is. Man, I'm so grateful to be here.
This has been the most fun, and fun's the wrong word, but it's the right word.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but I've had so much, I've gained so much from this, and I've enjoyed, maybe let's put it that way. I've enjoyed I don't give a fuck if anybody watches this.
Yeah. What a great conversation.
I really don't. Like I give zero fucks. Like if y'all don't like it, like literally eat a dick. But like this was the most I've enjoyed having a conversation in this setting in the however many 100 episodes that I've done. Literally getting to have this conversation, like it has inspired me to go do different things, whether it's do that or do something out, like, but to have the self-awareness to explore.
Yeah.
Exploration. I think if we get anything from this, it's don't be stuck in what you think you fucking know, right? And explore and be open to, like what you said, the uncomfortable, right? Don't live in the comfortable pain, but be okay maybe striving for the uncomfortable heaven or whatever the fuck, you want to call it. I'm going to do the same thing that I do at the end of every episode, even though there's no reason to. But at the end of the episode, I give the floor back to the guest. Fuck, you had the floor
the whole time.
But I do always like to give it back just to kind of close the show so that I'm not the one closing the show. Yeah. I always want to give the guest back just if there's anything imparting that they want to say to the audience, to me, to themselves, to whatever, just to make sure that there wasn't something that I forgot to dig into or to say, which we fucking did in 2.5 hours. Yeah, we definitely did not forget anything, but I want to give you kind of that last word.
Yeah, no, honestly, I feel like so much has been said. I feel like everything that needed to be said for somebody that's curious about maybe plant medicine or just a healing journey in general. I think I said everything that I could say that would be meaningful to somebody else, right? Without actually experiencing it. So, there's just, life really is a beautiful thing. And if you are in one of those spots where you feel lost or things are meaningless and pointless, I have been there. I've been there more than one time. And I know that feels like a very gray, pointless existence at times, but there is always light at the end of the tunnel. There really is. And so if you feel called to exploring consciousness or existentialism or plant medicine or anything like that, or just having a conversation with somebody that knows how that feels, it's such a healing thing to do, to invite that into your life. And I promise that there is more love and light out there for you.
2 questions that I have to close. 1, did you enjoy this as much as I did?
I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me on.
2, have you ever done an interview like this before?
No.
Okay.
No. I think the closest thing to this, I was on Ty Cobb Backer's show, but it was at a conference where there's a lot going on, and stuff like that. And we did talk about, we talked a little bit about going through heartbreak and personal growth, stuff like that. But I wasn't able to share anything like that. I literally just got back from Peru last month. So this is,
okay. Well, I win that.
This has been, I win. It's not a competition, but
everything's a fucking competition. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. It means the world to me to be able to do this and to be able to do it with good people.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I believe I can call you a friend now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I appreciate everything that you do. And thank you for going down a path with me that isn't the normal path when you have to go do these things of talking about fucking sales and roofing and bullshit.
How do you get into roofing?
Right. And stuff that nobody, people care. But people
they already know it.
But people care about this. This is how we fucking connect with people. So Becca, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you got something out of this, please share, subscribe, do all the bullshit, because we don't have any fucking sponsors. I pay for fucking everything. So please get the word out there. Although we do this at the end of every episode. Zyn. For all of your nicotine needs, cinnamon is my favorite. It's, it's good for you. Tucker says so. So we're trying to get a sponsorship from Zyn. We never will, but I'm going to keep trying at the end of every.
The fact that they don't call it cinnamon is really a marketing miss.
Oh shit!
So I'm just going to put that out there. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good one.
I'm
That's
for hire. I'm expensive.
Guys, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to drop this episode way sooner than I anticipated, just because it was that good, because we're 20 in the can, but we're going to have to move you to the front of the line. So thanks again for tuning in. And remember, everybody, to be authentic or get the fuck out.
Get the fuck out if you can't be authentic. Get the fuck out if you can't be authentic. Yeah. Swipes.